Video games like Postal.
Going postal.
Going postal. New video game. It's called Postal.
There are a lot of people that really wish we would go away, but it's never going to happen.
Their whole premise is so over the top. It's so ridiculous.
There was a video game called Postal. We just ran around shooting people.
Oh, this is going to piss off your viewers, isn't it? Oh, well.
Going Postal, The Legacy Foretold, a new documentary about the history of running with scissors. Streaming this spring. Pre-order now. Go to goingpostaldoc.com. That's goingpostaldoc.com. Tell him In the Keep sent you. He had been told by his parents and grandparents that he must fall in love and really know a person before becoming committed. But maybe people who felt that way have never learned the universal language. Because when you know that language, it's easy to understand that someone in the world awaits you, whether it's in the middle of the desert or in some great city. And when two such people encounter each other and their eyes meet, the past and the future become unimportant. There is only that moment and the incredible certainty that everything under the sun has been written by one hand only. It is the hand that evokes love and creates a twin soul for every person in the world. Without such love, one's dreams would have no meaning. Maktub. In Arabic, that means, it is written. From The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
You brought up the fact that you've traveled all across the, or not all across the world, but you've been many different places except for the Northeast, and I was just curious to hear a little bit about your travels.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I didn't do a lot of traveling outside of the Southeast as a kid. We just didn't do that, you know. And most people never leave their region, I would say. I probably did more than some of my friends did, you know, just going to different states and visiting family, visiting around. So I went to Tennessee, North Carolina, Texas, you know, the Southeast, Florida, all that area. And it wasn't until I joined the Air Force that I got to see more of the country. So then I immediately went to California, and then I was in Arizona for a long time. And, you know, during those years, I traveled all around the country just for the sake of doing so. And then when I got out of the military, I took a job and I was in Europe for a couple of years. So I went all over Europe too. I went to the UK. I lived in Denmark, but I went to Sweden. I went to the Czech Republic, to Austria, Germany. So I've seen a fair slice of the world. I just never had any particular reason to be in New England. That's all. That's the only reason. I'd love to. It'd be great. I just haven't had the opportunity that presented itself along my path.
Yeah, and immediately when you mentioned going out of the country with the Air Force and going to the Czech Republic and Europe, what would you say was like the biggest sort of lessons, maybe surprises, that you came across? I'm curious.
It's going to sound so generic, but I mean, the similarities between people everywhere are real, like, because people always say people are the same everywhere, but they're different, I guess, would be a good way to start. For me, the culture shock of realizing that not everyone, like Americans are kind of known for being very straightforward and like, we'll talk to people, and especially in the South, I would say even more so. We'll just talk to people in public that we don't know and tend to be like quite straightforward. People in Scandinavia are not like that at all. They don't like it. They find it intrusive and weird. So that was a huge culture shock for me. On the other hand, I would say that in general, people everywhere want the same things in terms of, you know, they want to be loved. They want to have friends. They want to move forward in their careers. They want to, you know, have adventures in life. Those motivations are I think, intrinsically human, whereas cultural things like how people talk to each other could be wildly different. Um, but if you know how to say thank you, like if you can express gratitude, I think you can pretty much get by anywhere. You just have to learn whatever their local word is for like thanks, I love you, dos más cervezas por favor, whatever you need to say to get by.
And that point that you bring up with the speaking to the Scandinavians and their sort of cultural difference being not the same as America, where we're always kind of just I mean, of course, you have introverts and extroverts, people who are quiet, people who are loud in America, but that that's intriguing. Have you ever came across the concept of spiral dynamics?
I've heard the term, but I couldn't define it for you if you asked me to right now. What does
It
that mean?
it was something that, like, opened up my mind from a man named Leah Gura, and
Mm.
it's kind of an understanding of maybe levels of awareness, if you will, and how I have some friends in Africa, and they've told me stories of, like, at one point, you can have a man in America living in Boston not lock your door at night, and that's just the reality of the situation. You just know you're not gonna get, like, broken in on. But in Africa, they'll have, like, bars over their windows, like 3, 4, like, metal, all this sort of and that's kind of due to this concept of right in different countries, different cultures, everyone kinda was raised in these different ways. And it just intrigues me to kind of, like, find yourself in that situation where you maybe want to talk to someone on the street, like, you feel like you wanna throw them a compliment, because 'cause I'm very much like that. I'll just speak to anyone and everyone if they're doing something that I resonate with or I find attractive, I'll be like, "Hey, like, what's up? Nice. Well done. Like your curly hair," etcetera.
Yeah.
And so just I guess I find that really intriguing how humans are all the same, like you're saying. Inherently, we all have that human design. We want to be heard, understood, and have connection with others. But I just find that interesting.
You know how at the end of your podcast you always say like, "I love you. I really love you. I care about you," and all that stuff? If you were on the streets of, like, Copenhagen, maybe not Copenhagen because it's more multicultural. Let's say you're in Aarhus, somewhere in Denmark, and you just, like, told a random person like, "Hey, man, I love you." It's not that they would, like it's not that it's directly offensive to express love, it's just that the fact that you did that is it would never happen if you weren't from somewhere else. Like, they don't do that. Um, so, like, what I was told, kind of upon arrival, like, "Hey, people don't like that kinda shit." But what I learned is that they actually tend to respond well to it, it's just unexpected. Whereas in America, if you're like, "Hey, man, love that curly hair," dude's gonna be like, "Hey, you're looking good too, bro," like, appreciate it. And you may not have any relationship beyond that. And I think, um, to Northern Europeans in general, they find that that's a very shallow relationship, which I understand. It's a good critique. They'll say like, you Americans, you always go around and you say like, "What's up?" or whatever, and then or "How are you?" and all that kind of stuff, but you don't really mean it. You're just saying that to the guy at the grocery store counter that you're not talking to anymore. And then my response to that was like, "Oh, I care. I do." If the guy told me like I'm having a bad day, I would stop and say, "Tell me what's going on. What's happening? How can I help?" But there is that also, I've done this as an experiment too, where you walk down the street in America or somewhere and you're like, "Sup," and the other person says sup, and then or either someone says, "How you doing?" and you say, "Pretty terrible," and then they don't know how to respond because they're just being an automaton. They're just doing that
Mhm.
all the time. So, I don't know. I think that it's a good critique of our culture too, and they're not wrong. They're just different. Um,
I
but
love
they
that
appreciate
angle,
compliments. They appreciate it.
right?
Everyone does. Everyone likes a good compliment, right?
I feel you hit the nail on the head, though. It's kind of like, are you delivering that, small talk Are you delivering the small talk with care? And this is really getting into, more of the unseen, right? Because it's like it's not about the message. You say, "What's up?" You say, "What's up?" It's how you deliver that "What's up," right? Are you actually there to listen if someone says, "Man, I don't know what's up. I'm kinda struggling today." Are right? Because for me, that's one of I feel the most fruitful things in my entire life is just the act of listening, right? Because what happens if I'm gonna give you just a little question, like, what happens when you genuinely listen?
You you can go one of two ways. When you genuinely listen to someone, you can either find that you're forming a deep relationship and it's like, oh, this is really good that I'm doing this. You can also find that you've been sucked into a black hole that you can't get out of without having to set a boundary that you're uncomfortable making. And I think a lot of folks, especially in our culture, find themselves in that trap because they're like too nice for their own good,
Mm,
where you end up with someone who will maybe not even on purpose, but like sort of continually take advantage of your kindness. Um, and to circle back to the other thing, I think the Scandinavians are more comfortable just cutting that off from the jump. You're like, I'm not going to put myself in that position. Every man is an island. They can take care of themselves. We take care of it with our social security and our tax. I pay my taxes. I shouldn't have to babysit. That's Denmark in a nutshell, right there.
I like it. I
Yeah.
do. It's very you see, this is like one of my favorites is being paradoxical.
Hmm.
Because, right, sometimes I say that in the podcast, "I love you," but at the same time, I also there's this quote from Rumi, which is like, "If you're gonna shoot an arrow, dip the blade in honey." So I love to be harsh, but I also need to bring in that compassion, right? So what you're talking about with the Scandinavians is kind of like, are you really just kind? Or is this a facade? Are you just being nice to be nice? Are you just throwing compliments out because you want to receive compliments, right? Are you just saying what's up because it's just programmed into you and you're like, I don't know, you're unable to just look someone in the eyes and give them a wink or something. I love to get into this more, maybe subconscious communication, like where we're paying attention to every gesture, the cadence of the speech, the tone of voice, the words, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that brings to mind The Secret, and I'm a fan. I know it's a little bit weird and new agey for a lot of people, but I like the book a lot, and I do sort of, in a broad brush way, believe in the law of attraction. But so many people read it and they don't internalize the intention part. They more just get the if I behave, it's like orthodoxy versus orthopraxy. If I behave in the way that this tells me to, whether I'm genuine about it or not, I will get the one. And that is a shallow relationship to create with anyone and with yourself. But if you just go around saying nice things because you expect that that should come back to you, in some ways it will, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get where you want to go in terms of like, eventually you're going to get called on that. Someone is going to notice that you don't really care. I would, I would definitely posit that having had that experience in Europe where like noticing that people really think about that. I also think about that. I guess I was just so used to living in our world. Does that make sense to you?
You know, it brings me up to the word motive.
Mhm.
Like, are what are you doing what you do for? And this is kind of what we were talking about off air a little bit, that your motive for having people on, having these conversations isn't shallow. It's more for the fruit, which is, um maybe not the shiny object, right? But the real gold. And I've been using the metaphor of fool's gold lately because I if you look at the way that humanity is kind of operating right now, we we are just almost like headless chickens, a lot of us. But then you and I, we can just sit here and have a conversation where we're kind of just taking it step by step. And I'm not thinking while you're talking, right? I'm just genuinely listening and letting the conversation guide us, right? Letting our everyday lives guide us. There's this quote that I like by Outcast, and he kind of says, the everyday ruler can't be too wrong. So for me, that's like being honest about, oh, yeah, did I have a motive, right? Like, did I go up to that girl because I want to create a certain impression? Or do I just go up to people because it's almost like intuitive? If you make eye contact with someone and you just like have a moment where it feels like, oh, there's space for us to have a conversation. See, a lot of the words that I use in terms of communication, they're a bit abstract. Like, what does space mean? Well, practically, like there's space between my lips and the microphone. But you can feel that space if you're like aware of maybe the unseen, if you're just paying attention to not only the surface, if you're not getting stuck in your motives, right? If you question your motives, then you learn about yourself. I digress.
Yeah. I think it's bringing up paradoxes earlier. It's an interesting thing because there are times, especially in your line of work, you're talking with entrepreneurs, right, where you do have a motive. You need to speak to someone because you have a specific goal in mind. And you can approach it with like I don't really care what goes. I'm just kind of here to see how it plays out. But there's also times when you're in a business meeting and you have a particular thing that you want from the other party, and the other party wants something from you, and you've got to figure out what that is. Um, and so I think a lot of what I don't struggle with this, but I think I've struggled with getting other people around me, maybe on my teams or whatever, to embrace is that it's okay to be assertive. It's okay to just say what you want. And oftentimes people will respect you a lot more if you do. Yeah, there are so many things in business meetings where it's sort of these cultural courtesies. So you'll see this in Asian culture a lot, the Japanese or even the Middle East, where there's almost a social requirement that you talk about anything and everything but the task at hand for a long time first, and then it's okay to delve into business. Whereas I'd say Americans are known worldwide for just being like, "Hey, let's just get right down to brass tacks and talk about what's at hand. Let's make sure everybody here gets the deal we want. Move on." The negotiation part of it. Um, and when I'm looking through like the list of just episode titles of your podcast, stuff that I've either listened to or sometimes I don't even listen to it. I just like see the headline. I'm like, that's what I'm going to work on today. You know, like you mentioned thinking while listening, and that's something I'm so guilty of. I do that all the time. I'm always like, I think it's because of the podcast situation where there's this situation that could be just dead air between us talking, where I need to make sure I'm a step ahead of that all the time. And so that causes me to like, I'll hear something and then I'll maybe not be like 100% just thinking this is what I'm going to say next, but it's like in case this ends in a non sequitur, I've got to have something floating in my head. What do you think of the differences between like how people approach conversations when they do and don't want something out of it? What are the appropriate ways to handle those situations?
No, the most appropriate way to sort of be both a businessman and someone with who is not just a human having or human doing, right? We're energetic beings. So, but all that being said, right? There are specific meetings. So I feel it's kind of like being dynamic. So that means I don't think what you're doing is bad. Understanding like, hey, if this is a non sequitur, what could arise? But then can you notice? Because I do the same, I've watched that same process unfold for me. And I notice it kind of stops me from listening and continuing to dance with the same flow that I was just listening to. I feel like part of this game is understanding how to meet people exactly where they're at whilst still being assertive, like you're talking about, right?
Mm.
Like not being too passive so that you take on everyone's energy, but at the same time being open and vulnerable enough so that you can meet others where they're at. So your question is so good. It's one of those questions that I like can't say step 1 you do this, step 2 you do this. But I would say like primarily we got to get good at being balanced. And sometimes that means you drop the hammer. Then other times that means you're kind of very light on your feet. And the only way to understand when to employ certain energies is like listening to your thinking while you're listening, noticing, oh, yeah, like this is where my mind goes. Why does my mind go there? What does that imply? One of my favorites is to like, okay, we use certain words, but what does each word that we've just used imply? And these are the sorts of conversations where, I mean, we have a great environment to do that sort of thing right here. But if you're just passing by someone on the street, there's just not the space for that.
Yeah. The meanings of words is always on my mind. Like, what is the intention? What were the subconscious little tidbits that I can gain from the words that you perhaps didn't choose to use, but inadvertently used while you did it? What was the tone? Everything. Um, and interestingly, there are, I don't know if it can be trained. There seem to be some people that really pick up on this stuff very intuitively. Maybe not without even being able to explain what it is that they picked up on, or that they just know how to read people. And then there are other folks that are a little bit less likely to do that. You know, you're more math, left brain type people. You're what we would call now, like, everyone's autistic. Oh, you don't really get social cues, that kind of thing. And there's use for everyone in that space. It's just a matter of like, would you send someone who's really bad at social cues to a very important business dinner that a huge negotiation is going to take place where you need to impress someone? Is like, is that's not probably not the particular night that you need to slay that dragon.
That's that's a good point.
Mhm.
And so that brings up like both the logical mind and the intuition because okay, motive, business meeting, and then sort of logically you understand certain person is at certain place. While intuitively it's kind of like, well, one of my questions that helps me is like, what's the simplest next step? Or almost I've learned a lot about communication with others and just knowing when to do what. That's like, it's a broad statement, knowing when to do what. What does that even mean? Well, there are just certain, if I define the word intuition, it's kind of like the processing of millions of bits of information simultaneously. So, how do I logically explain that, right? I would have to run through millions of bits of like social cues and subconscious things. But I feel there's a way, what you were hinting at is like, I never chose to kind of be like this. And that's almost what you were saying. And therefore, I never judge people for not being like this, right? Because I feel you get to a point where you realize, okay, you are who you are. Now, the question is, how can I fully be who I am? And then the next question is sort of like, what are the false parts of me that I am playing out right now? Right? Like, where am I wearing a mask in my life? And if we investigate, I think how you get intuitively connected is not through seeking to be intuitive. I think it's through noticing when you're lying to yourself, noticing when you're like doing something that makes you cringe deep inside, but you're doing it because you want to conform in some way. Does that
Right.
does that like resonate?
Absolutely. I think every single person I know, including myself, is guilty of, sometimes you catch yourself doing something that you wish you hadn't, either through habit or through, through circumstance, like you feel trapped. Um, Definitely, I hurt for people who have jobs that require them to do things or be in situations that they wouldn't be if they weren't getting paid for it. I think that sucks. I'm really happy to be working exclusively for myself now because I've been in so many, especially in the military. More than anything, there's like just these situations that you're in. You're like, this is not who I am. But then you're,
That's a really good topic.
yeah. Tell me about it. What do you think?
You're listening to KEEP in the Keep. Please take a moment to tell at least one other person how much you enjoy the show. That's right. Grab that link and send it to that buddy you're thinking of who you know would be interested in what we're talking about right now. Maybe post it somewhere. I know it seems scary, but you can do it. I believe in you. Don't hesitate to leave a comment and a 5-star review, a like, wherever you're listening. And if you want, Patreon supporters for this show get episodes early, access to our secret Discord channel, chances to suggest questions to our guests, our games, and whatever else I can do for you. Every little bit helps. This podcast directly supports my ability to do what I love and take care of my growing family. The link is in the show notes. Thank you, bless you, stay in the Keep.
I really remember dabbling with the idea of going to the military because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Not a clue. I just kind of knew that I didn't want a corporate cubicle job.
How old are you
That
now?
was- I'm 26 right now.
Hell yeah, okay. I'm 29, so we're not too far apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the military, there's actually I won't go far here, but there's a client that I have, and he's running a cleaning business, and we're sort of helping him scale his cleaning business. And
Mhm.
he was telling me about going to the army. And just yesterday, I saw him at the gym, and he mentioned that it's only a 5-month basic training and then a once per month thing. And that just made me ecstatic for him because although some individuals need that discipline, right? Some people need to like be put in a box. But there are also people who that is the last thing they need. And I feel that's the type of guy I am.
I think
And
the last thing you need, people, are the ones who need it the most.
you I like that too a lot. I like that a lot. So go deeper there because I want to listen to where that comes from. I like
I
that.
I am also, like, resonating a lot with what you're saying, like, I don't need anyone to tell me what to do, all that kinda stuff, and the truth is that's a lie that you tell yourself, and when you find yourself as that type of person in a situation where you just have to accept that you don't have a choice, that you're just part of this group and you need to conform to the part of the team function that you fulfill for the greater good of everybody, it humbles you and it makes you a better man.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Because, like, why else would you find yourself in that situation? There's levels to this, right? It's kind of like, um, I'm at a point in my life now where I wouldn't voluntarily step back into something like that. But there are also moments in my life where I'm still that person, right? Who's just like, let's patch the holes in the ship together. Let's make sure this thing doesn't go down because I have a idea of who I'm meant to be, right? I think that's really important in any form of spiritual work is like being good at questioning the things or the ideas which you are holding on to. So I'll almost make fun of myself frequently. Like my mom will tell me something or she won't tell me something. I'll be like, "Don't tell me what to do." But I'll say it in such a like, you can tell me what to do. It is what it is. But at the same time, I make fun of myself by saying that. It's like shining light on the part of me who doesn't want to be told what to do.
Yep. Yeah, I am so guilty of that. I I think I was always sort of a natural leader, like someone who I was just very comfortable being in charge of things and like telling everybody like, okay, do that, do this, do that, and I could see the big picture in my head. And, it makes for project managers, that kind of stuff, pretty well. But I was terrible when I had to step back and like let someone else lead. I've always been terrible. I'm still terrible at that. It's something I need to work on. Just being a member of the team and knowing it, just trusting in another person's instead of my own. Because I would be the kind of guy who's like walking into the boss's office and screaming at the top of my lungs saying like, "You're doing it all wrong." And they'd be like, "If you just calm down, like we have a plan." "What's the plan?" And they're like, "You don't need to know the plan." "But I do." And that's such a it's I think it's good to have those experiences, but I would also say it's something that I personally need to and want to work on, is just being more comfortable letting someone else be in charge. It happens all the time. My wife and I have very similar personalities where we are both have that "don't tell me what to do" instinct, and then both of us also, like, have to, like, take those moments and realize, like, we each have each other's best interest in mind. Why are we so adverse to that? But it's like a precondition from other things in life where it's like, if someone else is telling me what to do, they don't have my best intention. And she's also in the military, so we, I think we both had that experience. And then taking the space to say, like, okay, you're not trying to boss me around. You're just trying to help. And each of us having to say, like, I need to work on not trying to be the leader all the time. And then also recognizing, like, but it's okay that this other person cares about what I do and how I feel and what the consequences of what I'm doing are. And that's another paradoxical dynamic, but I think those paradoxes make for great relationship where you can constantly be faced with some of your worst fears or your biggest challenges and be comfortable doing that. And that's how you get better at things. That's how you grow.
That's exactly it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because especially with, like, couple relationships, you really get accustomed to one another's, subtleties or
Mm.
habits, like, they're what you labeled social cues, right? Just those things that are quote, unquote, "little," but for me, this is where it brings back up, it's not about the message itself, it's about how you communicate the message, you know? I Because if someone tells me what to do in a like, "Hey, dumbass, go do," I'm like, "Yo, what?" But if someone says, "Hey, Justin, could you help me out and get that done, please?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got your back." It's kinda, and I'm not saying I'm gonna, like, throw a fit if someone tells me, "Yo, dumbass, do this." But I am saying that in real human interrelationships where you actually care about one another, you're going to understand what words to use, what tone of voice, what not to say. Or like you may have something clear come up, but you may also feel now isn't the moment. Let that thing sit. Let me figure out how to communicate it more clearly. One of my favorites, it's, like, biblical, but I'm not a religious guy, but it's like, if you don't have anything nice to say, why are you saying anything? So, like, if you can't what I decipher that as, is if you can't communicate what you need to communicate clearly, let sit. Figure out how to communicate that kindly. And then one of my favorites is like being kind and assertive simultaneously. Like you can change how you communicate in any moment. And this is kind of, I feel, the playfulness that any real leader needs. Because does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, I had to take classes on assertive communication. And one of the interesting things that I learned, this was like part of therapy, that I learned about myself was that I felt like I'm a very assertive person. And in most cases, I am. I'm very comfortable telling someone what I want. I'm very comfortable saying no, except with someone that I'm very, very close to. And then I have this tendency to just sort of like be passive and let them make their own mistakes and not say anything, or even kind of shoulder a lot of weight without complaining about it. Because I mean, many people have been through these situations, but like as a kid, that's just kind of how I felt it was to be. I had a lot of siblings, and I just felt like when it's someone you're close to, you don't bring certain things up. You just let it happen, and you fall into your role. Ironic considering what I was saying. But when it came to not close friends or family, I had no issue whatsoever, just being direct. Um, so there's a great book called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty that I think really targets this type of behavior. and teaching people to be more assertive in their communication, but giving you those tools where it's like you don't have to come across as an asshole. Because the reason why you feel guilty when you say no is you said no. It's because you're afraid that the other person is going to by you saying no, or feel shocked when you finally put up a boundary that you never, because they've become accustomed to it. And it could be that they're not a bad person. It could be that they're just simply taken aback by a change, or it could be that they truly have boundary issues. And then you need to be defensive with that person. You need to be, or even offensively defensive with that person, and say like, you can't take advantage of me anymore. But you don't have to say, listen here, you son of a bitch, I'm not going to take your shit anymore. I appreciate this, but I don't have time to deal with this right now. You're going to have to figure it out on your own. If you need help, you can call me, but I can't promise that I'll have time. And learning just to do that it requires some people, myself included, to take a lot of time to reconstruct their way that they deal with social situations.
It's like when you're saying no to someone, you kinda have to already be aware of how they're going to react. Like, if you will, is there a way for you is there a way for you to be so, like, present in the moment that you're communicating that you can, like, feel where they're standing, right? And this is what I mean when I say meet someone where they're at,
Mhm.
where, eh, you're just you're open without judgment. And also what you mentioned too about the past, with your family, right? Where maybe something that I've just learned psychologically is from ages 0 to 7, right? That's what creates a lot of our foundational perception. And based on how we were raised in that time, that's like half the work to actually feeling energy and being aware of what isn't materially seen, but still being able to feel what is there. It's like Bob Proctor said once, you just have to tune into what's already there. And the art of that is like understanding your your programming from 0 to 7 and how that, like, extends into how you see yourself, how you see others, and then, like, the art of questioning where you stand, right? Because how in the world could you ever understand how someone else is going to react without first observing all of your reactions, right? So that's kind of how I do the energetic communication is I don't find anything more intriguing in my life than breaking down my own projections. Like when, w- let's say someone says something to me and then I feel friction in my heart or my gut, or I get insert fear or insecure or triggered in any sort of emotional way. It's like in that trigger, that interaction with someone else, there's an opportunity for me to learn. There's an opportunity for me to, respond instead of just merely reacting.
Right. Do you uh, just break down kind of like what you do, who you are, a little bit for the listening audience? Because you are a coach essentially for people who are in the service-based entrepreneurial sort of space online mostly, from what I gather. And then you're also a personal trainer, like in the gym?
You know, that just how do I put it? I've always been an athlete, so that's like the back end foundation.
Hmm.
My line of work really is like I'm angling it toward those who have climbed not the wrong mountain, but for those who have gotten the things which they thought would make them happy and they're still not happy internally, right?
Mm.
And that's kind of where the energetic understanding comes in to uproot like, okay, I got all this money, I did all these great things, but I still feel empty inside. I feel disconnected from my heart and I don't feel joy. Like, what's going on here? I thought, like, once I got this status and this career and accolade and etc., this income, my life would be sweet. But then, you start to feel you climb the wrong mountain. And then on the back end, I do jujitsu. I played football when I was younger. I've always been weightlifting my whole life. So, it was funny. My jujitsu instructor, he just posted an ad yesterday um, about looking for some new directors, and I just reached out. So we'll see if that happens in the future. But I got a lot of things going on right now. I'm doing the coaching. I'm building a lead generation business with my business partner, and but holistically, it's kind of like you, just figuring out there has to be a way for me to find work that I enjoy. And
Yeah.
that's my foundation. That's really the foundation.
Yeah. I just enjoy helping people. And I also find it frustrating when someone, as you were saying, like they seem to have climbed a mountain and then they are not happy. And getting them to see their own misinterpretation of what it is. If someone has it, like, hey, what's your, and then I hear them, and then my first thought, oh, that's all wrong. I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna say like, you don't need to do that. Sometimes I have. I won't lie to you. Sometimes I have just told people like, that's dumb, don't do that. Because on one hand, that's a judgment on my side, but it's also like some people just can't handle that shift, that red pill moment where they're like, oh, everything that I believe is a lie. Um, but like first and foremost, I just always like don't do anything just for. You should have money in your mind, as in order to be able to do what it is you want. But if you think that just getting rich is going to make you happy, it's not. It never does. Anyone who's ever been rich could tell you that. Very simple. And if someone is rich and thinks that being rich makes them happy, they're lying to themselves and they're probably an evil person. So I would keep that in mind too. But especially in the video game space, I deal with so many clients or just colleagues, friends, peers, whatever, who have like this goal in mind of like, I want to be a game developer. How are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to make a game. Okay. Well, how are you going to do that? And kind of slowly constructing in their mind, like, why is it that you want to make a game? Why is it that you think that you want to be in this industry? And if the motivation is because it's the only thing in the world for me, and that's what I really want to do is be, it could be like I want to make this particular game. It could be I want to work in this industry, as a level designer or a programmer. I just want to be in this space in general. And it can also be, well, I just hate what I'm currently doing. That seems preferable. And oftentimes the truth is you go from point A to point B and you realize that this is just the same thing in a different career on paper, but I'm still just as miserable making games as I was, I don't know, insert regular, electrician, whatever it was. So the question is like, does your career make you happy because somehow that career fulfills you, or is it have something that you've got to figure out about what motivates you that will kind of stringing words together here, but that will more align, as you were saying, with like who you really are. And it's very, especially with younger dudes, I would say they always think in the short term. I did this myself. I really had this realization in maybe the past like 3 or 4 years. I always had this idea like, if I could just get here, I'll finally be happy. If I could just get to this point in my career or this job title, this amount of money, get this project done, then I'll be able to relax. And every time I climbed that mountain, I would see a valley and a bigger, taller mountain. Ah, what a mistake this was. But it's never a mistake. You just learn and come out better for it. But I have this instinct to try to protect people from making the same mistakes I did. And sometimes I have to take a step back and say, I'm just going to have to let you figure this out. And then we can talk about it later. And then we'll just share the bonding experience of having both gone through that realization.
It, it reminds me of, right, if someone isn't there to listen, there's only so much you can share with them. And this is like one of the harder parts about learning, like actually changing in depth inside your heart, is like you want to share the change with others.
Mhm.
But if they're not ready to change, if they can't listen, then you got to find people who are going to listen, especially if you, like for me, I don't know anything more meaningful than having real conversations and just being alive, like vital, enjoying the moments, like picking up a leaf and looking at all the details on that leaf. To me, you get to a point where you just start to see, okay, the once I get there, it comes via thought. And we're meant to have memory because memory plays a great role. We have our knowledge, our experience, and we can have so many different imaginations and fantasies. But there's a certain shallowness to all that is derived via thought. And so I think what I'm kind of sharing with humanity in a way is how can we live our lives where we're both sharp, calculated, honest, intellectually wise and advanced, but also connected, like connected to our holistic, our gut, our heart, our mind. And I think one of the tough ones, especially for like certain industries, whether it be doctors or lawyers, game developers, engineers, like fields where logic is predominant. Like, how do you invite that balance into your life where you're not just falling into a trap of once I get this, then I'll be happy? And I feel the sooner you can like unravel that illusion, which is you said it perfect. What happens is exactly what you said, right? You get to the top of that mountain, then you realize, oh wait, there's an even bigger mountain, right? And then the real journey I feel is like figuring out and then not forgetting, because if you figure something out once, you can forget it. So you need to be able to embody, like, hey, the destination is the journey, motherfucker. How do you enjoy every moment and every day? And I mean, I wish it was that simple, right? I wish I could just say, do this. But I also, the game has been created in a way where it wouldn't be fun if it was that simple, anyways.
Yeah, as I get older, and I think I already kind of have a vision of the kind of old man I'm gonna be, but I'm gonna be like the guy on the taller mountain waving as I see people make the summit. Hey, been there. Good job. Um, it's interesting though, the the dynamic that you find yourself in, and I think anytime that you have this sort of like advice based service, your podcast is so like, it's amazing. It's just like short, maybe 10-15 minute, tidbits, and like I don't know if you plan it, you can tell more about your process too, but just here's some things to think about, and basically giving advice. And then I think that the natural response out of especially entrepreneurial type people is going to be like, fuck does this guy have to offer? What is this 26-year-old from Connecticut going to tell me that I don't already know? Right? And it's a logical question to ask. But maybe the tone is a little wrong. Maybe the receiving it is wrong. But what is it? And then you also have people who have gotten to a place where they're actively seeking help. They're like, I want to know what else, but they may not necessarily go to you. They may not think like that's the guy that's going to change my life. So how do you tackle that? How do you navigate that space?
You know, I it's always been like certain things have felt that they came more easily. And I'm sure you've had this in your life too, right? Where maybe you mentioned natural leader, right? Um, certain things are just easier, smoother. For me, I've invested like 10, 20, almost 30K in this point in terms of learning the skill sets that I need to be able to do the work, right? Because how do I put it? The sales calls, the marketing, the branding, all of that, and understanding exactly the individual who I'm speaking to, that's all the stuff that was harder for me. And I'm not saying I'm done or I'm a master, but and then the message, like the speaking, the internal work, just feels very like this is your path. Like, keep rolling, stay open, right? Hence the MMA coaching. And I also do some hardscaping with my friend, build patios and help him with his business too. So it's like I'm an open man. Wherever things bring me, I'll go. But at the same time, it has been challenging for sure to understand, like, hey, how do you communicate something which is not necessarily tangible? But Travis, like, eh, wait, Tyler, the thing that means the most to me is like being able to feel what makes me feel right. Like what charges me, what makes me feel alive. And I know that when I have conversations with one of my clients, Adam, like, it is just it's beyond joy. I can't put it into words, but it's like he's listening, I'm questioning him. He knows I'm not questioning him with like a demeaning manner. We're just like unraveling his inner workings together. And so ultimately, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but really the most challenging part is like doing the marketing.
Yeah.
Like doing the marketing in a way where I'm incorporating the pain points, and I don't know, I feel I'm at the point where the right things, the right people, the opportunities, the money will come, and this is kind of the essence of following your heart, is I'm not doing the coaching for money primarily. Maybe it started as an idea and that was the thought, right? But the whole reason I started coaching was because I wanted to have a podcast. And it went from podcast, share the message, to, oh, wait, how do I get people to the podcast? Well, go on social media. And I came across coaching. I was like, oh, well, maybe this feels right. So went into coaching. And so I don't know. It's, I guess, this openness to being. Have you ever heard that quote where it's like, the lantern is guiding the way, and the lantern is only showing you a few steps ahead. It's not
Mm.
like you have a jet light all around you. And I choose to kind of live my life in that manner where I'm not going to logically plan everything. That doesn't mean I'm disorganized, right? Of course, be orderly. Dot your I's, cross your T's, be sharp, be honest, precise. But let your heart guide you. I know that's a long rant. I digress.
No, no, no. It makes perfect sense to me. I'm definitely. I think the best analogy I could give you is to, like, it's like the Lord of the Rings. That life feels like the Lord of the Rings. Like I'm going to Mount Doom, and then people will be like, "You can't get there." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm going." And you're like, "Well, I mean, there's like orcs and all kinds of challenges and stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." But I'm not really thinking it's gonna be a straight line. I'm not thinking we're just gonna, like, bushwhack our way straight to Mount Doom. I enjoy the process of, like, every little thing that comes up, like, "Okay, how do we solve this mystery? How do we get out of this situation?" And I it's one of the big realizations I had about as a creative person, like, you were talking about your motivations, like, I got into this because I wanted to have a podcast. Like, for me, I mean, I wanted to have a podcast, don't get me wrong, but what I realized, uh, deeply about myself is that every single thing that I've been in, I really just like storytelling, and I don't really care what the medium is. Like, in video games, I like telling the story. I like writing the script. I like having, sculpting it an experience for a player to have. I don't really care about programming, and I I enjoy the things that programming can bring to you, and I enjoy art, but I don't wanna be an artist, like, drawing things, and I don't wanna be a programmer. I just wanna share stories with people. The podcast is the same thing. Wrestling was the same thing. theater, all of that stuff. It just comes down to I enjoy that. And so when I'm presenting, something like when we had that little conversation before we started about like what's the motivation of the podcast, or like I'm just like making it clear that it's not about getting you to say something that I can clip and say like, oh, this uh, energy alignment guru guy admits that he's a cult leader and has thousands of sex slaves in his basement or but that's a real concern because people do that. There are so many traps out there, especially on the internet.
You know, I if w- where do I start right there? I think there's yes, the storytelling and the scripting that you were mentioning. You know what gets me? I feel that's like, how do you bridge? And now, of course, that's what we're doing. That's why we learn skill sets. That's why we're here today. But you've seen that concept in the past of the starving artist, right? The people who it's like they have something to share, but they don't bridge it all together, right? And I feel that's been part of the journey. And like you're saying, I'm gonna go to Mount Doom, and I don't care if I go alone, and I don't care what it takes, but all I know is my heart shows me. Right, if you even look at, like, stories of, like, what did Jesus do? Walk into the desert with no, like, anything? Like, what? What do you mean? I feel if you have that type of connection with your heart, with source, with whatever you wanna label it, then you have that inherent strength which doesn't need conclusions. And I think there's beauty when you're not so set on certainty. Yes. And if you really step back, if we look at how this whole universe, this planet came to be, there's obviously some motherfucker out there, one, who likes writing stories, right? Because humanity is a story and it's been going on for so long. Yeah. And there's too many different variables. Like we're still figuring out new fish in the ocean every day, right? We don't know. But I guess what fascinates me is sort of, is there that essence of creation in every human being? Is like that power, that intelligence which wrote the story of the planet, human beings, is that within every single human being? Like that's my big question. And I feel some humans can like see, holy shit, it's undeniably true. And then what do you do from there?
Now, lots of clients and colleagues in the video game space, or in any space, but primarily I work with video game people who who come to me and they're like, I don't have enough money, so I want to sell this game so that I can have money,
Mhm,
and I also want to I want to do a particular. I have a goal for this game, a vision, and I'm like, the two can coexist, but you have to make compromises to align. I like this word alignment. It's going to be the word of the day.
mhm,
So I'm not going to say names because sometimes these are not pleasant. Some people have this disconnect where they cannot reconcile the two goals. It's like they're constantly angry because they're constantly unwilling to change their vision in order to make money.
mm,
And I'm trying to find the balance in between. Maybe you don't make dollars off of this. Maybe this game is a stepping stone on the way to your magnum.
mhm,
Maybe you just need to get this thing out so that you can have the money that you recoup from that so that you can circle back and either change it or make something new. It's even better than. And they get in their own way constantly. And I really struggle. Sometimes I just have to say I can't work. Like I just can't do this. And I've gotten better at that because I used to really believe anyone could do this. Anyone could figure. And I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying maybe I'm not the guy that can get them there, or maybe not at this time. Maybe this has to be done later. But it is very frustrating to even with myself, even with my own internal shit. It's not just I'm projecting this out on I think everyone has these moments where you cannot seem to see what's right in front of you. So you bring up the recognition source or God or whatever word we want to throw in there. I like the way that you talk about these podcasts. You're constantly asserting, not religious and not trying to tell you anything but it's also spiritual, and that's a paradox within it itself. But it's true.
Right.
There's been so many situations where it's maybe the answer to your problems. You're gonna hate me for saying it, but it's probably something like Jesus or Buddha. And I'm not saying that you need to go to church and give 10% of your money and all, but I am saying figure out whatever that is for you, because that's what you're struggling with is you don't have faith in something. You just think you're supposed to do it all for yourself. You just think in your mind, I could solve this, but you clearly can't, and that's why you're here asking me for advice. And my advice to you is probably stop depending solely on yourself. But it's such a hard conversation to have. I admire how brave you are, honestly, in your show with trying to do that, even though it's a nearly impossible task.
Right. And I think that's what makes the climb to Mount Doom worthwhile, right? Certain people are meant for those certain tasks. And
Mhm.
what you bring up there is exactly it. Because this is the essence, and this is why I say call it whatever you want it. I'm not part of a certain religion. Why? Because I'm not going to segregate the truth, because the fact is humans get in their own way. We all do. We all do. That's natural. And but there's beauty in unraveling how that works, right? Because and this is I what you're saying is really on point too. Like sometimes you're not the guy. Sometimes it's not the right moment. Someone may hear me and just not be able to hear what I'm saying. And that's okay. But I just know that the pacing is the pacing. And ugh, how do you put it? Like, if you are trusting, or it's like this balance of, okay, on a daily basis, there are certain things that need to be done. And also on a daily basis, there are moments where I cannot be the one who fixes this, right? So, how do you dance with both of those in your life where in business you may have to be a businessman, but is there a way to like incorporate um that healthy dynamic into your life? And I feel looking at how you get in your own way is probably the best start. Like if any of you listening right now are like feeling as if Tyler was just speaking directly to you, then look, like no one's mad at you, and you can't even be mad at yourself. Just be honest about how you feel, and then look at how your thoughts and your actions play a role in how you feel. Like if you have a internal conflict, well then you might just have to do what Tyler said and learn to compromise a bit. For me, young ambitious Justin would have, and I say this sometimes too, Justin on paper, who is he? But I know who I am in person. Like people say things to me that I wouldn't dare say about myself because it's like, wait, really? Wow. I like to say sometimes they're writing a story I wouldn't dare to write myself. And then, like, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean much because the message isn't about the person whom the message comes through. And I feel that's really important in any essence of truth being spoken, is like it has nothing to do with me. It really doesn't. This is just part of the fact that we have a human design. And hey, if we can catch on to how we're made what we are inherently, then maybe humanity is better, right? What you were talking about earlier about the team. Sometimes it's not always about you. I'm team humanity.
Yeah, I, I I think you and I have got to intersect on this. I was talking earlier about like sort of the misconceptions that someone might have from the way that your show is presented, right? Where you're listening to something like that, and I think there's a natural intuition to be like, "What's the catch? What's this guy want from me? What's he selling? Or is he trying to get me to join his cult or something like?" It's so. I have had this one guy on a long time ago who was a Wim Hof coach. He was doing like the breathing exercise stuff, and he was amazing. But I'm like, you definitely have some kind of weird sex cult, don't you?" And he's like, "No, I really don't. I really, honestly, I just like to help people breathe better and accomplish their goals through learning how to control their breath." And I'm like, "Yeah, but there's something," and I know it's not true. But I also get that myself where it's like people are like, why are you even helping me? What is this?" And I'm like, I, genuinely, my number one concern is that I would like for you to be happy. I would like for you to walk away from this situation happier, and I want your game to come out exactly what you envision, and I want you to make enough money, maybe not become a bajillionaire, but so that you can continue to go down this journey comfortably without struggling. Those are my motivations. I would also like to be able to do that in such a way that I don't go broke in the process of help.
Mhm.
That's my motivation. But there's this inherent distrust that you constantly deal with whether it be clients, friends, colleagues, just people that you meet on the street, whatever. Um, so have you ran into that? Like, have you dealt with people who like just straight out the gate, they're like, you're bullshitting me, or you're
You know, there have been moments where I can feel I'm not meant to speak to someone. That's the closest I could get to it. Like,
mm,
because I talk dude, the amount of people I go up to at the gym and just talk to is insane. But there are some who I just haven't yet gone up to and talked to. And it's like, there was a 18-year-old or 19, I don't know, but he was kinda saying, "Dude, you're so motivational, you're so like, how do you do this?" I'm like, "Man, I didn't choose to go up and talk to you right now." Like, I didn't think in my head, "Oh, let me go give this guy some motivation." You know what I mean? I just inherently, sometimes you're moved, and if we were to question my motives, I love this because it's like what you said. It's okay, can I do this thing in a way where I don't go broke in the process, right? Because I have no interest in being homeless. That being said, I do know that there's like an intersection of skills and talents culminating. And that's why I'm very much open-ended in how I live my life, right? I kind of don't ever see myself being dependent on any given source of income or dependent on any given one thing because I feel life is a ever expansive thing. So if you're not continuously trying new things, questioning your preconceived notions, questioning your beliefs, this is one of my favorites though because like I don't naturally benefit through well, how do I word this? There are just certain things that fuel you, right? And when I record, when I speak, it's just very much rewarding to feel how what you do changes what you are. I'm gonna stop talking right there. What do you think about that? Like, um, it's rewarding to feel how what you do changes what you are. What do you feel
yeah.
about that?
First thing that comes to mind straight out the gate is that this podcast started as a very different thing than what it is now. Like the motivation of this show was I really at the time cared a lot about arena first person shooter. I don't know why, but that was like I was obsessed with playing Quake. Like bad. It was almost a problem, like a
Yeah.
video game addiction type scenario where all I thought about all day long was Quake, 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 Quake. And I was a big fan of this other podcast that they were called The State of Quake, ran by two dudes named Unkind and Slip, were their tags anyway, and another dude named D-Ron occasionally. And they were like kind of the only show in town that was like bringing you the sports and the updates to the game, politics behind it, all that kind of stuff. It was fantastic, really, really well produced show, and I love those guys. Um, and so my motivation was to like help them because they were struggling to get together and make it. I was like, what if I came in and I started doing, like, I'll interview the pro players and like could feature it, that kind of thing. And we'll talk about other arena games too, not just Quake. We'll talk about Unreal Tournament, about Doom, all that stuff. And that'll be like a way for you guys to have more content, and I didn't have any expectation whatsoever of money from it or doing anything of my own with it. It's just going to be part of their brand. And then over time, I kind of realized that they were kind of not going to do it anymore. So then I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it on my own now. And then that led to, you ever read The Alchemist?
Hey, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I have.
So sort of a similar thing where if you should reread it if you haven't. It's fantastic. But the next thing I know, I'm in this space and I've ran out of arena shooter to talk about. Like, there's not that many of them. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? And then right at that same time was we call like the boomer shooter renaissance, like all these 90s style, like crunchy graphic games that are sort of inspired by Doom and Quake single player games became extremely popular, like really, really popular. And I was already in that space. So then people started coming to me, be like, hey, you want to and talk about my game? I'm like, yes. And then that grew and grew and grew. And then I was still in the Air Force at the time, and I knew I was going to get out or stay in the military. By the time that it came time for me to get out and go, I had already in the video game industry through the people that I had either helped or they'd helped me or whatever, networked with to create what, in the Keep podcast, and what a showcase that we had called Realms Deep is like a really great way to kind of get the trailers for a lot of these independent games in front of people that otherwise couldn't get that coverage. By the time I got out, I had a full, like multiple job offers to walk straight into another job in the video game industry. Then I moved to Europe and I spent a couple of years just learning the business, marketing, project management, how to run a QA department, everything that I needed to know in a video game company, I could just be part of right there in Denmark. And then when that job window started to come to a close, where it's like, I'm not really relevant here anymore. Like what I'm doing here is kind of over. I won't lie and say I wasn't depressed about that, but what I realized is I could just go back to America and I know everything that there is to know about how to start a company like this. And I had already had in the Keep as an LLC because of the podcast. So I was able to just take the games that I had been working on silently, and I'm like, oh, turn this into a real business. And now I work for myself. All of that started because I had a really innocent point of view of like, I just want to help these guys with their podcast. And so to circle back around to your questions, like I just think that everything is iterative. You always have you may not know it, but you are always working towards whatever your future. Your lantern in the darkness scenario. Like I didn't know where I was going. Maybe at times I had goals or like I want to, there in that way. But the opportunities just presented themselves along the way as long as I stayed in alignment with what I wanted to do at the time. What are my motivations? My motivations, I would like to say, were pretty pure, relatively pure, for the most part. And the universe, the source, seemed to just reward that with opportunity. That I would also say many people are on that path and are not yet, this is why I bring up The Alchemist, good at seeing the omens. That, when an opportunity presents itself, do you see it for what it is? Or do you just see something vague that you don't really understand? Because there are those, and it probably happens to me every day. There are these situations where it's like the pot of gold is right here, but all you see is a chest. And it's like, just walk up and open the chest. The door's open. Walk through the door. It's right there. And then you just like, I don't want to look at that room today. I'm going to, and then they walk right past it. But maybe that's just not the door they're meant to walk down at that time. I don't know.
That's so good. That's super. And like, there's a few points, but really, the fact is that if you're moving purely, innocently, you almost wear your heart on your sleeve. You're not like always doing everything you do for or with an expectation for reward, right? That's the corrupt part of us. That's the corrupt part of the mind, which is almost like black and white, like zero-sum games. It's me versus you. I want to always get the right. But if you're just Okay, right. If you're listening to what your curiosity is driving you toward, what genuinely piques your interest, there's something, right? There's something there. And then there's also something there with the moments that just mess you up, whether it be a relationship, a certain fear, a certain interaction with a coworker. There's something there too. So I think the the greatest part of learning how to do alchemy is starting simply and just looking at those moments where your cauldron, if you will, is boiling. And that metaphor really means that your gut is boiling, right? And this is why I like to use the three bodily centers, because straight up your body will communicate so much with you. You know, if you're always thinking about Quake, right? You felt what that did to you. You knew, you're like, it's almost a problem. I love that honesty. I love that because it's that sort of relationship with our own mind and our awareness of our three brains, gut, heart, and mind, that when you're honest about what is being communicated, then you can like see the things that your ego defense mechanism covers up, right? Because when I say you're Tyler and I'm Justin, we're really the same thing deep down inherently, but we're all in different forms. So, is there a way to be be gracious about the fact that we are separated into forms and that will create, if you will, we have a cup, clear water,
Mhm.
ink, droplets of ink in that cup. But if we're aware of how our identity is creating our movement and the energy we radiate, then like you can start to get better at seeing the omens, the signs, the gifts, the opportunities that are like um maybe it's a gateway, but the door is covered. Maybe like a secret mansion type of vibe,
Mhm.
and the gateway is behind the bookshelf. You gotta get good at smelling, right? You look at the wall, the bookshelf looks like the wall. There's no pathway to the secrets. But you gotta get good at, like, paying attention to what most people don't pay attention to, maybe? I digress.
No, I'm about to make a huge jump, but I think I can tie this together. So, alchemy in the in terms of recognizing omens or symbols in nature, like nature philosophy would be like a more proper term for what I'm talking about here.
Mhm.
If you are immersed in the world of religious symbolism, of spiritual symbolism, of alchemy, Freemasonry, whatever that happens to be, you know, and you get used to seeing the signs, as they would say, then you start to recognize, I think, that the universe, the source, God, is giving you all these different, as you say, open doors that you can walk through, or they could be telling you don't go here. And the better you get at reading that, the better you will be at just kind of like navigating life more or less unscathed, or at least more comfortable with the situations you're in. So, I'm really interested right now, especially in psychic research. I am like, I think the episode before you will be Steve Mera, who's like the head of parapsychology in the UK. Really, really brilliant guy. And what's interesting when you look at people who are into like astral travel and viewing and are good at it. Like I'm talking about people who have like worked for the CIA, the government, that kind of thing. Ingo Swann, these examples. He would talk about how if you are remote viewing a target, let's in his situation, let's say you're looking at something, I don't know, or on Mars or on Jupiter or whatever, and you're trying to figure out what's going on there. The human mind can only conceive of what it has something to explain, right? So if you told a remote viewer, I want you to look at Cuba in the, 1960s and try to figure out if there's a nuclear reactor there. If that person doesn't know what a nuclear looks like or a bomb, like an actual detonator for a nuclear weapon looks like, they will not see that they'll see something that they can tie together like that, like that it's a symbol or a metaphor for that. So they may see a tea kettle about to like with steam
Yeah.
coming out, about to blow.
Mhm.
Or they might see a stove or a pot boiling over. You brought up the cauldron. And their mind will just superimpose something that they do understand over something that they don't have a concept for. And oftentimes in life, this is so woo woo, but I don't really care. Uh, you will have those moments where it's like if you feel that pot of that cauldron or whatever in your stomach is starting to get uncomfortable when you're in an uncomfortable situation. That might mean that this is an explosive situation. If you have a dream and you have a vision about, I don't know, something that you're about to do and you see every scenario where it could go wrong, but you get a symbol instead of exactly what's going to happen, does that metaphor of that symbol align with what your feelings are, and does it align with what you encounter if you go through with that? And those are really important questions I think that everyone should try to ask themselves. Because if you can learn to recognize those signs within or the signs that you see coming outwardly, you know, if you're walking towards a building and you see something like, I don't know, something that it doesn't matter what it is, like an animal fly by or whatever that just scares the shit out of you. Like if there's ravens sitting on top of a house that you're about to go in, chances are it's a scary place, and the universe is trying to tell you that it's scary. But if you're like apprehensive about something and then you see a dove fly through at that moment, it might just make you just comfortable enough to be like, oh, this is beautiful. I can handle this. It could be, but recognizing those things and how they make you feel and how that affects your intuition, not only is that something spiritual, but it's also like, at least in the realm of parapsychology and psi research, almost a provable scientific fact that the way that you approach things and the things that you interpret outwardly coming to you from that, whatever that thing is, will probably have a very similar result to what your experience is going to be or what your experience is. And that could be confirmation bias, but you could also say that confirmation bias is somehow what you're ultimately moving towards. Like, we don't know the timeline where you didn't do what you did. We just know the one where you did what you did. And that is the only experience you're going to have. So whether or not that could be said to be a confirmation doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. What is the ultimate outcome for you? What do you experience? And what do you want to experience versus what you don't want to experience? I digress.
When you bring up the confirmation bias, it very much reminds me of like one of those, this is how the mind will battle with the intuition. I'll
Mhm.
tell you a little story from my client, and he used to play
Ooh.
basketball, and he would have moments where he's on the court and he could feel, here's the opportunity, steal, like get the steal. Then his mind would bring up, oh, what if? Like, what if I missed the steal? Coach sees by the time that happened, there's no more opportunity for the steal. So the intuition, it works like that in a way where, um, and one more story, right? I was coming off of maybe a turbulent conversation or moment with my lady. And just as you said yesterday, I gave some silence for the situation, some space, and we were just both outside yesterday. She asked me, "How are you feeling?" And I'm like, I just feel a little, maybe like there's not too much to say. I'm still just processing things." And right as I say that, like a minute later, two white birds just fly together. And I don't see white birds often in the sky. They were logically called seagulls, right? And I didn't tell her that. And I noticed the moment where my mind went and wanted to like be like, "Oh, two white birds." And I just let that go. And I wasn't, I didn't plan to tell you that. I only share that because that was the specific example that you just mentioned. But then it's like, hey, do you want to think yourself out of it? Do you want to think yourself more into it? For me, I'm the type of guy where it's like, you just see certain signs, and then it gets to a point where it's like, am I really going to keep acting like this isn't obvious? You know? And then so what do? You don't go run around, "Hey, I know everything. Hey, guys, I could tell you your future. Hey, guys, I can do clairvoyance." Like, that's not how I work. I'm
Right.
more of a guy who's like, "Yo, if you see it, you see it. If you have ears to hear, you're going to pick up on this message." And a lot of the things that I love to talk about are so raw, I can't even put it into words without using metaphors. And that's almost how I know I'm onto something. Now, knock on wood, right? It's not me who's onto anything. I'm just listening. I'm just hearing.
Yeah. No, I mean, people are really they have very specific beliefs about this, so I'll try to be careful as I do this. But like Jesus of Nazareth was raised and educated in Egypt, where he was exposed to the mysteries. And when I'm talking about like he would have known all these symbols. And a lot of what is communicated in the gospel are things that align very well with. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but when you bring up the having ears to hear or having eyes to see, he says things like this a lot, and it appears to constantly sort of tell his followers like some folks are just not meant to understand that they're not going to get what I'm saying, and some of you will, and some of you will get it later. Like you're not going to understand what I'm saying now, but later it's going to, and later, there's going to be a lot of confusion. But when I said all these things, but there's a plan in place, and whether or not he was like the literal incarnation of God on earth, it's really not something that I'm here to solve. But I would just say like the wisdom in those words that he's expressing, especially in the temple or in the Sermon on the Mount, we're just straight up. This guy is in tune with what we would now call alchemy or nature philosophy. He really, really understood that stuff. And he's not the only one. There were many, many people along the way who either by education or by intuition appeared to know the philosophy that I'm trying to posit here, which is just to like be open to the signs of nature, be open to hearing what you're going to hear and seeing what you're going to see. And maybe you will understand it now. Maybe you won't. Some people can't. Maybe they're just in a different path right now. Maybe they're on a different wavelength. But when this podcast or ham radio, whatever, broadcasting, all free, hitting a lot of different places, hopefully you're going to reach someone else who can dial in and understand it. I think human beings, we were talking about storytelling earlier, human beings have an innate to feel understood, I think. And the more, I wouldn't say more, but like the further along maybe you are on your path to getting to being able to explain your personal legend or your metaphysical ideas, the more difficult it is to find other people who can accept what you're broadcasting on the wavelength broadcast. So being a great communicator, I think you alluded to this earlier, of being able to meet people on their level,
Mm.
approaching someone in the gym. Everyone hates that guy in the gym who's like, "Hey bro, you're deadlifting all wrong. You need to do it." That kind of. But if you could just start a conversation with someone and like kind of like, "Hey, how do you do it? What's your form? What's your ideas?" Maybe you can learn something from that too. Maybe it's not, but I know everything. Maybe they have something to offer you. And I think that's the way to do it for me. Like I really, really try to approach every conversation with the idea in the back of my mind that even if this person appears to be a fucking dumbass, I can learn from this.
You're listening to KEEP in the Keep. Whatever happened to the good old days, when computer role-playing games spent more time telling great stories than stressing you out with season passes and needless grinding? Call of Ragnar is our effort to bring back the best in RPGs. Play in the immersive world as two friends adventure into a murder mystery that lands them in the middle of a battle between gods. Head over to callofsaragnar.com. That's call of SAREGNAR.com for more info, and be sure to wishlist on Steam.
that has to be one of the most important structures to any form of spiritual work.
Mhm.
Um, be having that graciousness to understand, yeah, what the quote unquote fools may trigger within you is for you. It's a gift. And maybe they may not be teaching you exactly what you wanted to learn, but they're going to show you energetically what you're attached to, the the unhealed or maybe the uh, unclear parts of yourself. And right, this is what makes the whole world go round. Exactly as you're saying, right? Not everyone's going to hear, but not everyone's meant to hear. And I think that's the essence of, if we go back to the storytelling, the beauty of the game that we're in, because the complexity within it is just astronomical. But then it can also be very simple. And then even in that simplicity, there are going to be big waves and small waves. There's going to be raging fires and soft, gentle winds. And this I really like that you use that term nature philosophy. I've never really heard that before. But if
Mm.
there was anything that kind of was the foundation to how I see, really, you can let your own human nature and the nature of the external world teach you. Like, the most spiritual game is just being present in every moment that you're on earth. But how do you actually, and see, I think what my whole message is about is sharing how you can create that presence, right? Because it's all there. But if we're stuck in our own delusions, then how are we going to learn as humanity? So, like, there's an art form of cutting through your own bullshit.
Yeah. Well,
These Hey, these are the sorts of conversations that, like, I can already feel, how valuable they are, like, inherently within myself, and I don't know, it's just nice. It's nice to go in depth and have an extended chat where you're just it's not that, "Hey, what's up, man? Good. How you doing? Good. Okay."
yeah. It makes me it literally fills me with joy. I love having conversations and get I remember I met this girl, I don't remember where I was. I think I was somewhere in Denmark, and we were at a party, everyone was, like, drinking and all that kind of thing, and, uh, someone was just like, "What are you interested in?" And I just started talking about basically shit like this, and she looks at me, she's like, "Oh, it's all just the deep questions with you, right?" And I was like, "Yes, that's the most interesting stuff in the world. Why is it so difficult, I guess, for people to have deep conversations?" But I don't know, maybe they're not ready for it, or maybe I'm too deep. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. This is just what I enjoy. It's fun. It's good.
See, that's the fruit, though. It's
Mhm,
right there. It's just like, okay, find those who align with you,
mhm,
and there's no need to judge those who are not on your same path, right? There's 9 billion of us, or so they say, right?
mhm.
So, there's only so many conversations to be had anyways.
I'm gonna find out, I guess, how many
Right.
conversations I can have, and, if the folks that wanna come along on the trip to Mount Doom are welcome in my fellowship, and those that don't want to can stay in the Shire and live their happy lives all they want, and no one really loses out of that transaction, so whatever. I think
There's
it's,
a
go ahead.
there's an upcoming title that I have, and it's kind of like something of the essence of not everyone's going to like you, and that's okay. Like, find the people who you're meant to work with. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I just feel if you approach your life in that way, and it gives you a bit of like, I was just outside, and what hit me is, ah, yep, it's the ambitious mind for me, like the drive to get to a certain place that drains me of joy. What gives me the joy is just being here. And, well, what are the actions that lead you to the place of just being, right? Being present. And this is kind of the theme of what I tell people because it's not like, hey, what I lead with, right, is I've been an athlete my whole life. So weightlifting and just movement, walking, even just hiking in the forest. Just very simple things, but I can sense, all right, this like leaves me with a certain freedom. And if each individual can be honest about what that freedom is for them and what it isn't, you know, it's more about learning. You learn about who you are through noticing who you're not, right? Noticing those moments when you're like in that dark hole that you mentioned earlier. If we're having a conversation, you kind of said it could go one of two ways. And one way is you're wearing that mask and you just want to take that mask off, but it's not the environment to take the mask off. And then that teaches you, right? When you find yourself in those environments or those situations where it's just obvious something isn't clicking, that's
Mm.
how you learn.
Yeah. I, it seems like everyone wants to, in like deep down, be able to take their mask off, but there's so much danger out there that it literally is dangerous and expose yourself. I mean, to keep look at all the people in the history best I and I'm just saying high propensity of being executed for doing so. Like if you have like really really good ideas that are like, we should all just get along and have world peace and we should work together to go to the moon and get rid of all these deep dark agencies that are taking all our tax money and using it against us. Uh just pretty high percentage of people getting shot for or worse. So it's something to consider. It really is. It's not 100% safe to just be your true self all the time, as much as that sounds appealing. And I try to embody that. I try to just fearless say how I feel, but I don't know. I think about it a lot. There's a pretty good chance you're going to upset a lot of people along if you're doing something that changes the paradigm of the way they think. People do not like that in mass.
And you know what? I feel that it, back in the day, a couple years ago, something I really used to stand on is I'd much rather die on my feet than on my knees.
Mhm.
And to me, that embodies exactly what you've just said, where, yeah, I'm not saying I'm gonna, right, be full brazen all the time, right? There's a way to sense if there's space. But then there's also part of me which is like, I'd love to be that guy. Like, take me out. Take me out because I was living truly. That's almost more meaningful of a story to me than protecting this vessel, right? And I know that's a little bit maybe far out, but it's like that's the ground which I stand on. Which, like, if I'm the king of anything, I'd prefer to be the king of nothing. Nothing at all.
I always think about Obi-Wan Kenobi right before Darth Vader kills him, and he looks at him and he says, "If you strike me down now, I shall become more than anything you can possibly imagine." And I'm like, that's what I wish those were my last. And come on, like this dude is on something. But it's so true. It's just like, go ahead, do your worst because I will live. I will live on. I'm not afraid of dying in this scenario. Like Gandalf, same thing. You shall not pass, and then fly, you fools, get out of here. And then he comes back as Gandalf the White. He's more powerful because of the sacrifice that he made to stand up for, I would say, what he believed in, who he was trying to protect, and what he was trying to accomplish. Um,
and that takes a lot of guts. Not a lot of people can do that, you know?
right? And I would almost say that not a lot of people do it, but everyone can do it. And that's almost the seed of my work, maybe. Is like,
Mhm.
hey, you may not be able to comprehend yourself doing that, but find the thing that means so much to you that that is who you are, right? Because if there's something more meaningful than wearing the mask, then you're on that path to being that individual who isn't scared of losing themselves for something more meaningful than their desires, their ambitions, their goals, right? Like, I sometimes I'll say, you fuck goals," but then at the same time, have goals, right? Set them. Go down that path and just learn through what your life is and what it isn't. And as you travel down different roads, it's only natural that you change. Like, the only constant is change. So if you're vulnerable, right? I feel real strength creates vulnerability. Now, I would love to hear what you think about that. Why would I say real strength um it dances with vulnerability? What do you think?
What comes to mind when you say that is when people talk about courage or they talk about bravery, you know, I think it's natural for especially like younger people or more timid people to look at a brave person and say, "How do they do that?" And you hear so many people who you would probably categorize as being brave or courageous say, "I am afraid, but I do it anyway." And having the ability to, when faced with fear, when faced with adversity, to just do it anyway and accept the consequences, that is inherently what the definition of courage. It's like it's not that I'm not scared that, somebody's gonna be offended by what I have to say, or perhaps like maybe their view of me will change in a way that isn't conducive to the relationship that I think I want to have with that person. But I'm just gonna do it anyway, and maybe we'll both be better for having done that. Maybe if that terminates our about who I am with someone, then that wasn't a very good relationship to begin with. If I have to wear a mask to be around you, then I don't really wanna be around you. And if you have to wear a mask to be around me, well, then I don't know why, like, we don't even really have a relationship. I just have a relationship with a facade, with a mask that you're wearing, and so it's not an honest, real relationship. Um, there's utility to both, though. There are people that I don't want to have a real relationship with, for sure. There have been people where it's like, "Okay, I'm gonna put on my businessman cap or my" whatever it is that I have to do to get without it turning into something I don't want it to turn into. Perhaps you have to do that. I don't know. But yeah, just I think that bravery, courage, whatever discipline, it comes with sacrifice. Everything worth having just comes with sacrifice. Period.
And I love you said a phrase of the relationship I think I want to have, right?
Mm,
And therefore, it's usually the thing which you think you're sacrificing is actually it's a gift. Like, it's a weight that's dropping off your shoulders.
mhm.
And I feel there's a way of, kind of getting down to the root of, okay, like, I don't know if you know who Dan Coe is, but I like he builds on some of what we're talking about with I a lot of people, they create an idea that they want, but they never figure out that that idea isn't what they actually need, right? And Rolling Stones, they say, right, you get what you need, not what you want. And that essence has been said by so many people. And what I really am beginning to see is there are a lot of songs with lyrics that most artists are just sharing their mask, They're sharing their feelings, their projections. But then there's certain songs where it's like, "Oh, man, these guys, what are they on?" Right? I like how you use that phrase because 'cause I'll use that too. Like, some people may be when I'm, like, so energetic and open and just sharing, like, "What's this guy on?" I'm like, "I'm just on energy. I'm just on, I'm not here to cover myself up. I'm on the place where I just can't wear the mask." But like you said, that doesn't mean there aren't moments and environments where it's like, "All right, let's just not ruffle right now." There are some times where the message needs to be shared, and there's some moments where you're just meant to be part of the team, like you said earlier. And having the sensitivity to feel those moments, I feel that's the game.
What is it about your upbringing, or what, I mean, if you're not on something, what were the books that you read, or the films that you saw, the things that inspired you and created you as the person you are now? Like, how did you get on this path?
I feel, you know, I would say early on, my family, it was a bit weird.
Mhm.
And that put a hole in my heart because I had an image of what a father should be, and my father wasn't who I thought he should have been. And later, lo and behold, I am now extraordinarily grateful for the man that he is. Specific context is he had certain incidents. He was addicted to like um alcohol and oxycodone and different pharmaceuticals. And all that while, he always provided. Like, I would come home from school, he would make me food, wake up in the morning, he would make me, like, coffee, bring me stuff. He was like a kind man, but there came a point in his journey where he stopped talking, and my mom and him got divorced, and he just hasn't uttered a word for years. And you know what? That silence, it really showed me something. It showed me, the last words he said to me was, "I'm trapped in the prison of my own mind." And it shows me that he has a similar sensitivity that I've been given somehow. Because it's only certain people who are going to say something like that. Like, I'm to admit that he's trapped in the prison of his own mind. So that was kind of like the foundation. Uh, After that, I would say stoicism is super fundamental for any young man. Like, coming across, I think it was the stories of Epic. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. But if you look at like Socrates and Epictetus, I think that's how you say it.
Mhm.
Just the Stoics in general, they lay a good foundation for any young man. I would say that's a great place to start. Maybe if you like resonate with this message, but you don't exactly hear everything, that's okay. Start with the Stoics. But along the path, there's been two books that are super powerful. I would say the Bible's been helpful. Alan Watts has been helpful. Ram
Mm,
Dass Ram Dass has been helpful. And there's one man, Krishnamurti, who's been extraordinarily valuable for me. Besides him, like, Jordan Peterson is a good, stepping stone after the Stoics. Jordan Peterson lays some good, just psychological foundations for people.
yeah.
But in the later stage, I would say the book, my sister has it right now, Power versus Force. Is a great book by Mr. Hawkins. And also Reality Transurfing. I think that's by, his first name is Vladimir. In the Reality Transurfing, it's the colorful book right there on my shelf.
Mhm.
Where is it? Right there. Yeah. But besides that, you know, the place that I dabbled was with psilocybin. And I took a lot of psilocybin literally by myself. Literally by myself. All I did, I would stretch and I would just meditate and just breathe. And, the mushrooms, what they do is they kind of show you what you don't want to look at. if you will.
Yep.
And when you get good at seeing the things which you've been hiding and you don't stop there, because I had this moment where it was like, oh my gosh, I just saw something which I could not ever explain in words. And then I was like, wait, does this mean I'm special? Then I realized, no, you can get this moment through like the DMT-5-MeO. You can get like these moments artificially. But I feel the psilocybin, I like that route because you're not going to get any sort of fruit without doing the work. And the work is solitude. The work is being with yourself. And that was what really propelled me down this route to realize, oh my gosh, life is about consciousness. Life is about shining light on our distortions. And darkness isn't bad. Darkness is just part of the fact that we have a great storyteller, and that's God. And God's written a story which is so entertaining, right? So, like you said earlier, is Jesus the incarnation of God? I mean, well, he was tortured and killed. So, what do you think? I don't know. And that's kind of why I like that idea of, hey, if I get taken out, I get taken out. Like, I'd much rather share the message than live in fear of being taken out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think you're really in danger of being assassinated.
Thank you. Right? I
I, I,
appreciate that.
I hope not. But
No, I hope not either.
yeah, it's just important to point out that the bigger scale you get with telling people things that they're uncomfortable hearing, like you said about the psilocybin mushrooms, whatever. Like confronting people with shit that they do not want is dangerous. Uh, Doing that to yourself can be dangerous. Like I always approach conversations about psychedelics. Like I think there's so many people out there that are just like, everyone should do this. Everyone needs to have this. Like maybe not. Uh,
Mm. Mhm.
like the idea that like if every politician would just do a round of mushrooms or whatever, like they would just have all these epiphanies. I am fully of the opinion that you're only gonna have that experience if your mind is in a certain place. Like,
Uh-huh.
you could have bad trips, you could whatever, and it could a bad trip can still be things that you need to address. I've very much had that experience myself. W But wholly, like, I've seen people who walk into these scenarios, DMT, ayahuasca, psilocybin, LSD, just marijuana, whatever, and come out of that experience with, like, "I've learned so much and I need to change." And then I've also seen people just do copious amounts of it and end up with either completely the wrong message or just don't get anything out of it other than like, "Whoa, man, that was trippy. I had a good time." And that's the same with life in general.
Yeah.
You could take two people and put them through the same, I don't know, army basic training or something, and one of them may come out from that saying like, I learned so much about myself and I feel so much more disciplined and I'm ready to go tackle. The person may say that was and it's just a mindset. It's like, what do you take from it?
Yeah.
So, mm,
I know. You hit the nail on the head with you know, if you think everyone's supposed to be a certain way, please question yourself.
mhm,
Please. Like, it's kind of this art of understanding who you are while not like getting all caught up in projecting into the future who you are. It's kind of like you take your past, you look at your past without um attachment. So that means you just kind of break down, okay, maybe I didn't want this to happen, but what was the meaning behind that happening, right? You just ask certain questions as neutrally as you possibly can.
uh,
Same thing with the girlfriend situation I was talking to you about earlier. It's like, hey, some things aren't pleasant, but can you sit with the fact that it feels unpleasant and still be neutral? Like just accept the the bad things in your life? Because there really isn't good and bad. It's if you are going to sit with the moment, then you're either going to have an insight, a adjustment in your behavior, a new nugget of information in terms of could be very plain. It could be, oh, for example, I kind of purposely, but it was a game. I triggered my sister a few weeks ago because she was spewing something, and the last words I said to her, I was like, "That's just your perspective." A few minutes later, I walked into her room. She was mad, sad, almost crying, yelling at me. My logical urge was to walk out of that room, to not like be there. Intuitively, I understood she felt a certain way. I'm not judging her for feeling that. I'm just looking to understand her. So I just asked a few questions. I'm like, oh, so when I said that phrase, it made you feel that way. And then she kept talking, kept talking. Tyler, within 5 minutes, I was just on my knee. She was smiling. I had my hand on her leg. And she was like, oh, don't take that personally. Sorry about that. And I was like, no, don't worry. We're a team, you know? And it's like that sort of essence where you're gonna trigger people, right? But can you be gentle and kind enough to hold the space for them to let out what got triggered? And I think that's really the essence of this game where it's like, yeah, sometimes you're gonna cut people down, and then sometimes you're gonna give them the nutrients, the water, and everything they need to regrow. You know what I mean, if you will?
Absolutely. I love I well, I don't like being on the receiving end, which I have many, many, many times, right? Like, where it's, someone tells me something that's really uncomfortable, and I have to come to the truth, come to grips with what it is. Down south, we call that a come to Jesus meeting. I love those. But once you get through several of those for yourself where, like, someone imparts something on you or confronts you with something that's really difficult to come to come to terms with, you get the opportunities later to give that to other people, and I see it as like a gift where you really upset someone, and then you get to kinda, like, inside smile and say, like, "You'll thank me later," and you can be confident in a lot of cases that that'll be the case, where it's like, "I know this is hard, but pretty sure," things like with dads, a lot of the time, that's what the situation was. My dog's going crazy. I think there's a mailman outside. He'll be um, but where y you can, like, confidently know that that person is going to maybe 6 months down the line come back and say, like, "Hey, I really appreciate that you said that to me, it meant a lot." I have personally had that conversation with a lot of mentors that I've had. I think of one specifically, her name was, Master Sergeant, she may be a senior Master Sergeant now, Ashley Gordon, and she was just a lovely person, but she would every single day come out to where we were working and, like, individually person. Like, "How are you? What did you do this weekend? What are your plans going forward? What's going on in your life?" All that kinda shit, and I fucking hated it. I was like, "This is just leave me alone. You don't even really care. Like, I'm trying to work here, you're distracting me," and, like, I had that for years, and then after I got out of the military company and I found myself doing the same thing. I would go to every person's desk and leave a little sticky note or something. If you need to talk, let me know, whatever. And I was always like that. And then I realized, like, that's where I got it from. I got it from her. So I called her on the phone and I was just like, I just want to let you know, like, all those years that I was just like, fuck off, you still believed in me and you still checked in because you cared. And I learned from that and I'm better for it. And now I see the reason why you did that. So thank you. And those are really important revelations to have, I think.
I love that you shared that. It's a home run. It really is, especially the fact that you despised it, right?
Mhm.
I that's the essence of learning though. It really is. It's like I remember listening to Leo Gura, one of like the earlier guys who just kinda helped me out a little bit. And there were moments where he would say things and I'd be like, "Oh, but he said so many other things that I resonate with." I'm like, "Is this what is this going on?" You know? Like, and he would say things, I'd be like, "Argh," and that would happen, and I'm just like, "Okay. Well, this is obviously someone who is intelligent, who I align with. But then sometimes there are moments where I disagree. So is this about me being right, him being right? And then that's the learning right there, is when you have those friction moments, seeing how they arise. And usually it's like, for example, you get a sensation, right? You're walking down the street and maybe you have a smell. And that smell will remind you of a memory. But this happens in light speed. So then your memory, which is pith, your memory's packed with past knowledge and experiences. And then you start thinking, right? But it all started from just a sensation that reminded you of a memory which the past experience unfolded within.
Mm.
And as your consciousness begins to expand, it's like the whole light speed process of that slows down. And then you're more aware of, oh wait, that trigger came from that memory. I literally watched that sensation arise within my body or my mind, my heart, my gut, my three centers. And then you can like get in tune with the processes which you used to be unconscious of, right? And I think this is the game. This is real religion right here, like making your subconscious conscious. And this is, I wrote a tweet yesterday somewhat along the lines of demons are God's employers, or the demons work for God, meaning that God creates the darkness, the triggers, so that you can have the things which are hidden inside of you be released. And this is also kind of what the mushrooms do too. But it doesn't stop with the mushrooms. See, and I think that's the problem with psychedelics is people think they've achieved something because they had a certain moment. It's like, no, my friend, that's when your work starts. When you realize that you had contact with something beyond your ego, which is probably the storyteller of this entire planet, then your work begins because you have this enhanced sensitivity to notice things that are unconscious to others. And right, the whole essence of our conversation here has been, sometimes you got to be the team. Sometimes you're going to get mad at the lady who's doing something great for you, even though she's doing something great for you. You're not aware of it yet, right? And I think that's where the compassion comes in. Is like, okay, I see something, you may not see it, but you might see it. So why would I ever give up on you? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. You're reminding me of Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher. But he had this actually very. I would be interested if we could bring him back from the dead and have him talk to Jordan Peterson because they have very aligned ideas of finding your religion, your true, your connection with whatever it is that you call God, and centering yourself around this sort of relationship that you have with something bigger than than your own ego. Because it just doesn't seem to work at scale or even, for an individual person to just think they have all the answers themselves. Like, if you're not open to learning from a teacher, whether that be a person that you meet along the way, a bird that you see fly through your garden in the this difficult conversation, if you're not open to learning, then you're not going to get any better than you are. You made a really beautiful analogy with when you're dealing with psychedelics or something like. It's like, does the utility have to do with what experience, or does it have to do with affects what you're gonna do after the experience? So, I mean, for me, it's like I've had some of these moments where I, I'm outside of my own ego and I'm like really in tune with something, and I see a symbol. Like, I don't know. One time I was like, I had rented a house out in like the mountains, and there was a statue of the Virgin Mary that I just like latched onto, and I was like, that's been there the whole time. What does that mean? Like, why is it that in this moment, in this particular mind frame that I'm in, that is what I'm focusing on? Why is that bringing so much of my attention? Why is that demanding so much of me, right? And I could have walked away from that experience and forgot about that. But instead, I think even after the fact now when I see a statue or anything that has to do with the Virgin Mary, consider what does that symbol mean to me? And what was the lesson that I was meant to learn from having had that experience? And that doesn't have to be while you're under the influence of at all. Like, it could just be in general. It's just I guess for a lot of people, if you're especially if you're, like, really deep in your, like, in your behind your mask, it's a good ticket out of the, the station they're in. It's like it's the episode of SpongeBob where he's stuck in rock bottom and the bus keeps passing him every time he goes closer to the candy machine. And the answer is you don't need candy right now. That's what he's trying to tell you. Or that's, I don't know, the storyteller is like, the candy is not the answer. The answer is for you to go talk to the guy, and you have to speak to him on his level because he's also at. That's why he talks like this. And that every story has that. No matter how, like, high or low the level, every story that a human being is some innate sense of, like, I am trying to communicate something in my soul in a way that you can also understand. Otherwise, I'm just screaming into a void here, and being alone is, like, the worst, right? Intellectually, spiritually, like, loneliness is probably one of the worst things you could do. Now, there are times when you should willingly subject yourself to loneliness so that you can confront things. You talked about Christ, like, going into the desert for 40 days, and then he's confronted by the devil and tempted to forgo everything. His, like, promises him the whole world if not go through with this whole getting crucified thing. But then he makes the decision, like, I'm gonna go through with what is the intention of my Father in heaven for me to go through, to accomplish this mission that I'm on. And that story is more powerful than had the story not occurred.
And I think the beauty of what you're sharing there is we just talked about SpongeBob and Christ in the same topic, right?
Same
I
guy.
think that's the beauty. What did you just say?
Same guy. They have the same qualities.
Exactly. It's
Mhm.
like the message is everywhere. It's it's gonna show up in different forms continuously, and right, for a young man, it may be exactly that SpongeBob version. Like, if you are trying your ass off to catch that girl, and you can't catch that girl, maybe it's showing you that your attention is on the wrong thing, right? And then it's, like, kind of funny in people who are learning and adjusting and listening to source, whatever we call it, that you get the things which you wanted through dropping the need, dropping the fuel which was chasing them. Like, for example, this is good. I like to tie it back to sports because I was never good at football until muscle memory clicked in. Then junior, senior year, I was like team MVP. Good football player. Same thing is happening now with
What
jujitsu.
position did you play?
I was an outside linebacker, and that was where I did the best, but kind of like a nickelback. So we had a backer system because I'm only like 6 foot, and I was probably like 160 pounds in high school. So I wasn't like, a 6'3", 225 MLB middle linebacker, but more of a, all right, corner. I started as a cornerback, but long story short, it was like once I stopped thinking and once I was just comfortable being on the field, that's when I began to shine, right? When I was like, okay, I don't have anyone to impress. I'm just going to ball out. I'm going to do this thing the best I can. And that same looseness is coming into jujitsu too. And like, what's the lesson? It's like, if you really want that candy, if you really want to get rich, Not saying don't get rich, not saying don't be clever in relationship to passive income and finding ways to create wealth that also give you free time. But maybe you're on a certain timeline. So how about you learn to be patient, motherfucker, right? And that's like a message to me, especially myself, because there are things that I can see, there are things that I can feel. And it's like, yes, but be patient. Be patient. And how do you do that? I think that patience comes to you when you're open and you realize, oh wait, the bus keeps passing me by. Oh yeah. Oh, silly me. I got hooked into that other vibration again, right? I got hooked into that seeking, that chasing. But if you're rocking and rolling, you'll have the conversations you need to have, right? You'll meet the people you need to meet. The opportunities that you are meant to work through will be presented to you. But and then I'll end off this with the Latin definition of abracadabra is I create as I speak. So if you take this work and you put it into a moment to moment thing, that means you're aware of the thoughts you have. You're aware of the words you speak. And that's also the message of religion too. It's like the same essence is there. It's like bring a almost godlike awareness into the way that you operate this vessel. Easier said than done, maybe.
Yeah, I got a shout out to Jonathan Pajot from the Symbolic World podcast because that's an amazing podcast. I think everyone could learn from. But everything is symbols. Everything presents itself in some sort of symbolic resonance. That's how we understand things. And it could be that when you're on that football field or whatever, it's like the team logo that you all sort of like unifying understood but unspoken sort of value that everyone clicks to. When I was in the military, the core values of the Air Force, whatever it is, the team, your squadron's mascot, or you all have chants that you do, or whatever it is. But those are symbols, and those are how we interface with reality. Human beings. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, if you don't have a exact representation of something in your mind, represent for something that you can understand. Hopefully. And when you're confronted with a symbol that you don't understand, you don't recognize it. And then when you learn what that means, then you see it everywhere. That happens every day. You learn a new word, right? Abracadabra, whatever that, you someone who just heard you say that never thought about what it meant before. And now every time they see it, they're going to think, right? You go buy a new car, you go buy a new gray Kia, and then the next day you go out driving and you realize there's 100 of everyone has the same car as you. I didn't even notice that. It's just that it's in your mind now. It's there. And it doesn't really go away. You can, I guess you can get out of practice or things fade into memory, but it'll come back. It will recur to you.
I feel like a good question here is what are some of the ways that we can simplify our relationship to the symbols which are presented to us? What would you say?
I don't know if I'm the person to give that answer. It's just more like how do I do it?
Let's look at it together, right? Um, and yeah, you start though. You start. Tell me how you perceive and kind of break down the symbols that are presented to you.
For me, I think like most of my life it was purely intuitive thinking. Like I wouldn't put two and two together. I would more just like kind of see something and then make whatever I made up, right? So I think I was just naturally kind of good at seeing opportunity.
Mhm.
But I reached a stage, and I can draw another analogy. I learned the guitar by ear. I didn't know how to like really read music, and none of that stuff really resonated with me. Like learning particular scales or whatever. Eventually, I reached a point in life in my guitar journey where a friend came to me and he's like, "I think you would really benefit if, like studied scales of music theory for a while." And then I got like a lot better very quickly. by adding that to my repertoire. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I think I should have started earlier with that. I think I'd gotten up to a certain point, and then now I needed that next part. And the way that I developed playing created my style, which I don't know, it's not that special, but it's like it's the way that I play, and it's the way that I like to play. And then adding those other tools just jumped me up to like super duper level quickly. In the same way with symbols, I think going so long with it being intuitive and then later, like in my late 20s, getting into studying things like alchemy, things like philosophy, uh, looking more into, you know, ancient Egypt or mystery schools or Freemasonry or whatever it happened to. And especially for me, the tarot like changed my life. Like when I started studying tarot, I started seeing symbols everywhere because, originally you look at, I don't know, the Fool card or the Chariot or the Tower, and they invoke a feeling in you, even if you don't know what they mean. But those are universal symbols that you wear all the time. It's just once you've gathered your interpretation of it, and then you also cross compare that with what other people make of it, you start to see it more for what it is. Maybe you don't see the whole thing, but you have a better grasp. So now when I see the tower, I think of Babylon, and I think of this is a situation where things are going to be like a foundation that you thought was built being destroyed because it's imperfect. It's a much more specific intuition than it was when I was just going off of like, oh, I see a tower like being destroyed. Like I think of 9/11, but was that not just the tower in the language of the tarot happening in real life?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Sometimes you can't make up this, but
Mhm.
you can feel when things hit home on different levels. And what you just said there about tower being rebuilt because it was imperfect, right? That just hit me on a sound effect level. I'm not gonna word it out. Just
Mm.
ultimately, it really is fascinating. I'll build off what you just said, right? Because I asked you a question and you share the answer through a story, which is often going to be the case when the question is uh, a good question. Yeah. It's like, if I asked you shit questions, you'd be like, okay, yeah, 3 + 3 = 6. Got it. Uh huh. But if we're talking about like real honest things, then you got to tap into something beyond your memory. And that's what stories kind of help do. So
Mm.
I remember being in school and, you know, nothing caught my attention. But one thing that did? The pyramids.
Yeah.
And in history, I never really understood, and I still don't know, but I don't know. I feel like I used to be some form of an Egyptian. Some form, some way, somehow. Now, I'm not going to attach to that, right? But it's just like the way that my mind works and the things which hook you, right? The symbols which hook you. I don't have to logically understand why, but I can just kind of feel okay. Like, I'm just gonna let these symbols guide me. Like, I don't need to logically decipher, okay, this means this, right? Okay, so when I do this math equation, then this answer will come out to be exactly 3.7892. I rather bring a looser essence into the relationship to symbols, right? Because if you try to logically decipher symbols, then you can kind of get into the mud, if you will, right? Like too much thinking, too much projection. But if you just like, one of my favorite quotes is, the truth is shown to you the moment. I'll re-say it. The truth is shown to you the moment that the question is asked. And that means it's just, oh, you feel it. You feel it. And when you said that tower thing, it was one of those moments. I just felt it.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it means, but it hit home.
The I mean, the story of that, yeah, just harping on the tower. I don't know, that card comes up for every single time that I like confront something about myself. Like that's one of the symbols that always occurs to me. But um, actually, here's another story. When I was first in the Air Force, I was going to be, and I went to. I had mentioned California earlier, and I was studying Arabic at like the Defense Language Institute, and it was the single hardest school I'd ever been through. I'd never been bad at school until, and I had this moment where I'm sitting in class. All of my teachers were from Iraq, and the like dialect we were learning was Iraqi. And there's this chapter in the book where you flip over and it shows you the city of Babel, which is still in Iraq, and the tower there that they call the Tower of Babylon. And it occurred to me in that moment, like, if it weren't for that fucking tower, I wouldn't be in this stupid. Damn it, you know. And that recurring symbol has just kept coming back to me. And one of the interesting things about it is that it occurs in the Bible, the story of the Tower of Babylon. The people are trying to build a tower to heaven, and God scrambles all their tongues, and they all learn different. It also has to do with, and in some of the more recent, I think Crowley's deck especially depicts it. It has more to do with the Vedic goddess Shiva in Hindu, where she is this goddess who consumes everything. You know, everything that is built must be destroyed, specifically because everything that is made by man is not perfect. And so it cannot be left. It has to be consumed, destroyed, and then rebuilt over and over and over again. And that is like sort of the cycle of us getting better, better, and better, and growing as a race. And I think learning stuff like that, like when I was a kid, we didn't fucking learn about Hindu. They didn't teach us that in school. They didn't teach us that in church. You know, it wasn't something that was going to come up. But then having those realizations that many of these stories that they do occur have equal or equivalent or very similar, maybe a different take on the same principle, just broaden my perspective even more and make me more confident in my interpretations of like the stories that I'm hearing, the symbols, and the life that I'm living. All of that stuff adds up. And I've always felt bad for, folks that I know who seem to not have that natural curiosity out. And I don't know if that's because I'm like, am I just maybe lucky, or if I'm just more open to it, or if this is just the path that it was given to me to be exposed to these ideas and try to put them, or is it the other people who only have one particular perspective and have confidence in that perspective? Maybe they're onto something that I'm not on. My fault for not picking a and sticking to it, and just making myself more and more confused. But for me, it's just been a total enlightening journey the whole way. I've never regretted learning more about these things from whatever source that I get them from.
Right there, it's that same thing as if we make everyone have mushrooms. That's like what? Like what? It doesn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing as kind of what you're sharing with. Okay, so that may be your path, right? Maybe you call your right. Maybe you're lucky. Maybe the others are lucky, right? This is interesting because we'll bring in the quote, ignorance is bliss. And then we'll tie it back to you can only ignore something until you can't ignore it any longer. So, with the essence of what Shiva's about, what you're sharing, it's like, yeah, ignorance is the first tower. And maybe not everyone has been freed of their ignorance. But naturally, there are some humans who seem to be a little less ignorant, right? And it's interesting because it's like sensitivity, awareness, awakening, following your truth, alignment. It's like a double edged sword. Why? Because you're more sensitive to your own ignorance. But that sensitivity to your ignorance is the gift to lose the ignorance. But you know what? In the process of your consciousness expanding, it feels harder. Life feels worse.
Mm.
But things have to get worse before they get better, hence the rebuilding of the foundation continuously, continuously, continuously. So I don't know. I have no idea how humanity is going to unfold, but maybe there will be a time where there is the homeostasis or the baseline of human consciousness is no longer ignorance, right? And now, so I love to play with percentages. It's more of a marketing tactic than actual truth. I'll say, like, most people this, or 90% of people don't understand, or I'm not really meaning that, but it's a great way to do that thing which you were talking about earlier, right? To kind of trigger people, but I know in triggering people, it's a gift. It's like, yeah, you may hate me right now, but in 5 years, you may be like, "Oh, wow, that guy who made me angry, he was actually onto something."
Oh yeah, yeah. I was thinking how, like, the word ignorance comes from, like, the I meaning to negate, but like gnosis in Greek, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. This is really important in it. It seems that the point here, or at least for me, is I want to understand more and more and more. And I want to get to a point where it's like I'm at peace with my understanding. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but the journey is, you're saying, point. Um, but when you get right down to it, the reason why people are listening to your podcast is feel like you know something. And if something that you confront them with is difficult to understand and they're learning from, good, right? I can't tell you how many times, especially when I started in the show, people have written to me and said, like, I really appreciate something that, I only listened to your show of the game stuff, but then you exposed me to this, considered somehow they're all connected. It's following the same thread. It just kind of took you out of this particular world in that episode or whatever. All of my interviews, even with game developers, are really don't in general. Just like, tell me about your game and why did there's that there. But it's like, what is it about you, our choice? When you're talking about the way that we interface with reality, you use the term a lot when you're talking about life. You say the game. And I do like that analogy. I don't know if it's necessarily the actual nature of reality, but looking at life like it's a simulation, like it's a and I plan to dive even deeper as I continue to have more and more, psi research and paranormal people on. They're tapped into it really well. But like, if you're making a video game and you want someone to understand what they're supposed to do, you have to give them directions, right? And a lot of the time that's going to be in whatever your native language, and then people are going to have to like have it localized. You have to oftentimes pay a translator to localize that they'll understand, right? So start in English may not mean anything to, but you change the word. Nintendo geniusly a long time ago implemented this principle just using basic simple symbols that are sort of universal. So like when you go on your computer and you want to save something, you don't necessarily look at the word save, SAVE, you look at and even though we don't use floppy disks, everyone knows no matter what country you're from, that means save, right? There are all sorts of, you're looking plenty of that stuff there. The logo coming from the Greek logos for every company that you're looking at on your little start. I don't know. Maybe you have Steam, Spotify. None of those have words on them. They just have a symbol that you associate. Idea. The Zoom symbol, the Discord symbol, the Google Chrome symbol, the Nike logo. All of this stuff puts an idea into your brain without. And the design of a lot of these, specifically Nintendo games, but anybody who's a student of school is going to think. A game will train you to associate symbols with what you're supposed to do. It will train you, like in many cases, a level designer put, I don't know, a particular color on a certain pathway that is the correct way to navigate that. Consciously, you may not realize it, but you're following along. It may be an error. It may be that you see a door that requires a key, and you know you have to go key, but red. But making those symbol associations is how people learn, and it's how they navigate digital space and our reality, which could also potentially be a digital. But who knows?
Well, what that screams to me is honestly, it's profound and it's beautiful. So, how can we communicate in a way? I think this is part of the art of communication, is like learning how to not dumb down what you're saying, but how to communicate simply. And that's kind of where we have to take a step back and look at the complexity that is packed within labels. Like, you really won't hear me use certain words like narcissist or neurotic, or I don't know, just labels those are labels that I first heard from Jordan Peterson, really, right? He's
Mhm.
more of a clinical psychologist. And I like to use very human words like light and dark, natural, artificial. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way of turning your message or the way that you speak into Nintendo's universal language.
Right.
And now, of course, what is hidden within that is the universal language for who, right? If you listen to Krishnamurti, one of the guys who I was kind of talking about earlier, when I first started listening to him, he put me to sleep. I would literally, like, I don't know what was happening, but my energetic capacity, it was like I was listening, but I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I knew I had to understand what he was saying. It was like that. And I kept having to like pull over and this would never happen to me before. And I was like, am I like just eating the wrong food or something? But now I'm so sure it was just the potency of what he was sharing was so through the roof that it was like my physiological vessel was getting tired
Hmm.
because my consciousness was being spoken directly to. And I, I try to do my best to share the message in a way where, hey, if you're deaf, I don't expect you to hear this, right? And that doesn't mean you'll always be deaf. But and also, if someone's listening this far, you're obviously not deaf because you've been intrigued enough to stay this long in a basically 3-hour episode, right?
Or they're
So,
reading the transcript, but yeah.
true,
Right.
true. But either, right? Nonetheless, some form of curiosity has been
Mm.
piqued. And I don't know, I feel whatever field you're in, now you may need to use very specific labels in certain contexts, right? Let's say we're in a business meeting, high level. We're doing stuff, executing. Okay, let's talk business. Let's use those very specific words. But in this like heart to heart, human to human game or communication, like, can we be loose? Can we be sharp? Can we be strong? Can we be, can we pull some jokes? Can we tell some stories? Can we show that we're vulnerable? Because I feel you combine that vulnerability with simple language, then I think that increases the likelihood that people's ears open up. Maybe.
You're listening to KEEP in the Keep. If you love this show and you love supporting indie video games, please take a moment to check out In the Keep's upcoming Stellar Valkyrie. Built in the GZ Doom engine, this retro first-person shooter puts you in the universe of space bird bounty hunter Falco, who is on a mission to save his ex-girlfriend from the evil Black Star cult. Just type birdgame.space, that's BIRD game.space into your browser. hit enter, smash the wish list button, and stay tuned.
Think of Malcolm X in his message to the grassroots, where he uses the phrase like, "We want to talk right down everyone here easily understand." And that simple phrase is very profound. It's in the very beginning of the song "Cult of Personality" by Living Colour. But you were talking earlier about how music can like really hit you, and you just sampling that guy's speech in that moment kind of sets the tone for what the rest of that song, which is about cults of personality. Joseph Stalin, Gandhi, Mussolini, it brings up everyone. And it's like the greatest challenge, I think, of anybody who wants to be an influential or tell a story or to just get through to another person, even at the most personal one-to-one relationships, is being able to get the other person to understand what, because there really isn't any situation where I've said everything I have to say and that's, if you don't understand it, you're just wrong, or you just don't get it. It's like I always try to put it on me. It frustrates the fuck out of my wife and my mom close to me. I'm always like, if I reach an impasse, I won't just be like, oh, hold on, let me try to explain it in a different way. Till we all, probably very annoying, but for me, it's very, I need to feel like I have I have done my part to do a good job to make sure I understand what it is that you're telling me, and you understand what it is that I'm trying to tell. Otherwise, I feel like it's just I won't say a waste of time, but a failure to communicate, a communication breakdown, to throw Led Zeppelin.
That is superb.
Mm.
It's one of my favorite things to do as well. Like, how else are you going, right? What are the other options? To blame them for not understanding? I don't see that to be an option,
Nope.
right? To get frustrated because I didn't be precise enough? No. Oh, give me another shot. Let me say that another way, right? I that is it's fun. It's fun to have that humility and grace with yourself to be like, "Oh, maybe I didn't put it at their level. Maybe I didn't use the right set of words there. Give me another shot."
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
But it's also frustrating because a lot of the time what I get met with is like, "We heard you." It's a constant. My wife is probably going to listen to this. "Oh, you son of," but it's true, and we have this all the time, where it's like you say you understand, and then you prove to me later in the conversation. I'm not saying that you're stupid or that you're like anything. It's just that you say something that proves to me that what's in here, and I'm pointing at, is not actually getting through. Maybe intellectually, you understand the words that I said, and maybe the words sufficient enough to communicate what I'm actually trying to get across here. And the art of doing a podcast, doing conversations like this, is that you have to constantly get better and better and better at it. Like, and especially if you do your own editing, at least in the beginning stages, every podcaster try to do, every public speaker, whatever, musician, like, do your own editing, because you'll hear every mistake you make. You'll hear every time that you repeat a word over. There's probably a specific word for this, but it's not coming to me right now. But your verbal distractors, you will become very aware of them. And it may not be that you need to change them, but being aware of them, because you sort of naturally overcome them or come to peace with them if they're not something that you intend to change, which is fine too. And that can be very profound as well.
It's like change isn't something that you desire. Change isn't something that you force.
Mm.
But if you do pay attention to what you create, and editing is a good practical format for paying attention to what you've created, quite literally, but energetically too, right? If you say something in a certain way, we could take that frustrating moment of where it's obvious that someone through their action or through their words isn't communicating that they clearly understood you, else they wouldn't have said that or done that action. It's like in that moment of frustration, that's where you find the strength to be more accurate.
Mhm.
It's like, right, if I blame them for not understanding me, then I never edit or adjust or change or adapt. If I'm honest and I look at myself, then and this is really the simplest way to communicate the essence of the spiritual work, is it's just about looking at yourself. It's just about having the space, the leisure, the lifestyle, which allows you to be honest about the moments which you've created something which feels inherently wrong or inherently foggy. However you would like to describe that, but it's like there are moments, days, weeks, months, even years, right? This is why I like the seasonal perspective too, where it's like, oh my gosh, like high school Justin could have never predicted I'd be who I am now. That was a season, a stage, a cycle, right? And oh, this is good. This brings me back to the symbols, right? The symbols for me, it's like spirals, themes, patterns, those things that it's like you're trying to act like it's not. You're trying to act like it isn't a coincidence, but or maybe I messed up the words there. I guess what I'm saying is it's just really obvious that something feels real.
Right.
And when something feels real, you can question that. You can bring skepticism to it and see where that leads you.
How did you become aware of this podcast?
Um, it was just kind of natural because what I was doing is I'm shooting the messages to a specific list of people in the niche, right? So since you have the spirituality in your niche, it just I kind of filtered out the emails that wouldn't align with me, and then I pay attention to, like, the details of what the podcast is about, and then I shoot my shots. And, yeah, so before I keep going, just tell me more of what you're wondering.
Well, it's almost two sides. It's like on one hand, I'm wondering like, was my marketing successful? And on the other hand, it's like, I wonder what specifically brought you to the point where you were like sending me an email saying like, hey, be cool to be on your show or whatever. Because, some people it's like, I mean, if you're, I don't know, LinkedIn marketing, looking for things that align with your values and you're like, hey, and see, cast your net and see what kind of fish you bring. Or was it like you heard an episode of the show and you're like, I don't know. It doesn't really
Yeah.
matter one way or the other. It's more like my own curiosity.
What got me was so the structure is that I'm doing some outbound and you responded. And from that response, then I was like, this guy's open. Let me look into him. And as I listened, I'm like, this is literally, man. I went to a certain point in one of your episodes, and within 3 minutes of listening, you had touched on with your guest one of my favorite childhood memories of going over to my neighbor's house and playing the split screen, the Smash Bros, the Mario Kart. And when I heard that, I was like, this is worth a go. So that's the context. And I mean, you could say, well, what does that mean? I just say I took it as a symbol. I took it as a simple symbol that you and I come from a certain place of resonance. Just the bare bone fact that we were both playing split screen Smash Bros and Mario Kart. And from this whole conversation, I can see, again, it's worthwhile to trust the symbols.
Yeah.
Because this has been, I don't know how to put it, just a joy.
Yeah, man. No, it's interesting how people get connected, and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna reply to every cold email I get because especially so much. God, like if you have CEO and service pitches and whatnot, crazy. But I genuinely like really respect the art of the cold email. Just people who are just like shooting their shot, like seeing if they can get in touch with the right people for whatever it is. I've been on the other side of that plenty of times, especially in marketing, trying your best to connect with people who share your values and you could mutually benefit each other. It's a good way of putting it. Um, so yeah, that's actually really cool that you found it that way. I think the episode you heard, we were talking about, like split screen co-op and like the old days of him playing Mario Kart, with his family Smash Bros. With his sisters. But yeah, that's something that's lost, I think, in gaming today. That we don't have that anymore. Most of the co-op gaming online through like Discord, it's more adolescent kind of thing. The days of sitting in the living room with your sleepover, having those shared experiences seems to be largely gone. And it's something that a lot of people feel really back to the world of. And I don't know if that's possible. I worked on a project where that was like the explicit goal was to try to make that happen. And I'm just like, the zeitgeist is not in your favor. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that you're really up against a cultural wall when it comes to trying to design things around parameters around that intention.
It can be tough, when you come against those walls.
Hmm.
Like, where you have you ever heard of the game RuneScape?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I love that game, and I remember when I was, like, a bit older, maybe in high school or community college days, I remember trying to play the game again, and I'll have this with movies too.
Mm.
Like, I'll be like, "Oh, I want to do that." I have an idea. It sounds good as an idea, but when the time comes to actually, like, consider doing the action, I'm like, "Oh, man, I just can't get myself to do that." And that's almost my relationship to video games nowadays,
Mm.
where it's like, I love video games. I, like, want to play them, but uh, I don't know, maybe just not right now is the season. That's, like, the perspective I have on it, and it's like, um, I think you've done a great job in letting your heart guide your career from what you were telling me earlier and how this all unfolded for you. I feel like
You too, man.
it's thank you. Thank you. Like, it's you find yourself in places where I could never predicted I'd be having this conversation, especially on more of like a video game centered podcast. But at the same time, it's like, oh, but you're realizing too, it's not just about the first person shooters, from everything we talked about. And I feel this is kind of the key to life is seeing your attachments, seeing your preferences, and then having the humility to question, like, is that what I actually need, right? Or is playing video games just what I want to do? And now to anyone listening who likes playing video games, I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong.
Mm.
I'm not. Just be honest with yourself, right? Your heart will show you. Your heart will show you.
I'd say if you're playing games and you're getting something positive out of it, like if improving the life story or it's making you a better problem solver, just having a social life, whatever that is. But it certainly can, and I've had it can consume you like anything. You know, if you're up every night, you're not sleeping enough, and you're playing Dota with your friends and drinking Code Red Mountain Dew, feel like shit, and reconsider how much time you spend playing. Seems so simple, but it's true. And there's a lot of that, really. Been one of the more interesting anthropological journeys of really getting, because I wasn't like a gamer until I got into you know like I played games and stuff, but I wasn't like a video game centered. I'm still not really. My life is not my career largely, and I do enjoy games. It's not like who I am, but learning about the people who that is their identity and what makes them tick and why them positive and negative has been very enlightening, because it's oftentimes a type of person, and it's if you're escaping reality into something that seems preferable to the reality that you live in, on one hand, that's nice that you have that escape, and on the other hand, it's like, what can you do to improve your don't spend all of your drinking Code Red Mountain Dew and eating flavored hot Cheetos on. I don't know.
Right.
Mm.
It's like you might be in that reality to a point where it seems like destructive to imagine anything but playing the video game. And then that's like God showing you like, hey, you have just you have some space here. Like and this is why I'm not a huge like step by step or method guy or
Mm.
do this tactic. Like whether you do cold turkey or whether you just play a little less, like Tyler's recommending. There's a lot of different routes to um making your life smoother, more joyous. And ultimately, like I say there are some simple universal laws. Like I specifically remember my aunt, she would always let me come over and my mom wouldn't give me junk food, but I could have junk food when I went to my aunt's house.
Mm.
And I remember playing Modern Warfare 2 split screen with my cousin, like potato fries and donuts, and I was like, why do I feel so bad?" Like, I remember my intuition just I, like, felt sick, and I just couldn't logically put 2 plus 2 together. And nowadays, I can kinda just feel like, after this, we have this great conversation, I'm gonna be outside for at least 15 plus minutes at
Oh,
the
yeah.
very least.
I'm gonna take this
You
dog
just
for a walk.
Yes, I think I'll take my dog for a walk too, right?
Yeah.
Because I can feel. That's another great one. That's a great one,
Mm.
where animals will show you what you need to see yourself. Every time my dog isn't doing anything, he looks sad. Every time I take that guy outside, he look happy, right? Simple man. Um, and if you can make your life simpler, so I'm not saying don't play video games, right? But if you pay attention to the food you eat and how that food makes you feel, very practical, very simple. If you pay attention to how you feel when you go outside. And see, this is where it can get tricky, right? Because if your if your life has been unhealthy and you got comfortable with the unhealthy life, and then you do something healthy, your corrupted baseline may pull you back into the comfort zone.
That's the demon,
And
bro.
this
That's the demon trying to get you.
right,
Mhm.
right. Exactly, and, we create those demons. We're the ones who, um, are crafting our lifestyle, and that's part of this consciousness expanding is like, "Hey, if you got yourself" like, for me, I remember always being in good shape in high school, and if I could never I thought my life was hard, and I was in good shape, and I wasn't fat. I remember saying to myself, "I cannot imagine ever being overweight. Like, my life is already this hard. How could I ever be overweight?" And it's just like so wherever your homeostasis, your baseline is at right now, I just urge whoever's listening, if you're still listening, be open to change. Be open to crying. Like, if you are at a point where you look at yourself in the mirror and it's hard, it's going to get better, but you may have to let things get harder first. And that may be admitting to the things that you were avoiding for so long. You're not bad for that. There's nothing wrong with noticing that you have to change. So that's where it's like I love to deliver the hammer, but also with compassion too, because I know how it can feel to be like down on yourself.
Yeah. I mean, like you bring up like obesity and stuff. That's really difficult. That's a full blown lifestyle problem. It's not as simple as like. I mean, if you everything is a lifestyle problem, especially with addiction. When it whether your addiction is like eating too much food or drinking too much alcohol, smoking too much, whatever. Maybe it's exercising too much because that's also a thing. There are definitely people that I have been very close to who are like addicted to being in the gym all the time. Are you really like improving or are you just hurting yourself through this obsession? And maybe I think balance is everything. If you are running until what's that guy? Who runs?
David Goggins.
David Goggins is a self-destructive person. Like if your
Yeah.
knees are falling out, run a little bit less. It's not that big. You'll be okay. But, you know, he seems like he has a good mindset. Like he's punishing himself for, I don't know what it is to him about. But you don't have to hurt yourself. If working out for you is just like going on a 15-minute walk, and that's 15 minutes you have to spend away from your Baldur's Gate campaign with all your homies, you'll probably be better at Baldur's Gate from having done that. Like you'll
Mm.
everything else will like align around you being healthier. Whatever. It could be anything. And there's so many traps. There's a trap everywhere. There's too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Too much of a bad thing can be a good thing sometimes. You don't know. But just balance. Like stepping outside of the immediate moment. And that's the definition of hedonism. It's like when you're constantly just thinking in the short term, like what is the long term better thing for me? What makes more sense? Like I know that if I spend all night playing Baldur's Gate, the next morning I'm going to wake up late for my podcast. I'm not going to get shit done. My wife's going to be upset because I'm not spending enough time with her because I'm catch up on work. And it's just better if I go to bed on it. Do I do that every time? Hell no. Sometimes I play Baldur's Gate all night. Try your best.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect place to leave off because, like, if anything, that's what this conversation should leave you with is balance. The fact that not everything is black and white.
Mhm.
Maybe some of the things we said hit home. Maybe some of the things we said are going to hit home in a few years. Hey, that's balance, right? Maybe you're in a bad place right now, but you needed that bad place to get better. Hey, that's balance. So is the place really that bad where you're at right now? I don't know. Go outside. Go smell something. Listen to the things that are beyond your internal thoughts, right? Listen to nature. Just watch a stream. Watch water move. You know, if you're just so used to living life a certain way, see if you can uproot that. Question your lifestyle. I mean, I still have to do it. We all still have to do it, right? I like tobacco.
Yeah, me too.
I know that sometimes my jujitsu cardio would be better if I didn't like tobacco. Well, right? I gotta look at that. I'm not gonna judge myself, but I am gonna be honest. Like, hey, right? And I think this is the game. Noticing like, hey, I'm not perfect. I don't have a goal to be perfect, but there are things that will change about me. And I'm not going to force that change, right? I'm not gonna say, uh, or I'm not gonna like over attach to change. Like the exercise example is so good as well. Too much of a good thing? Is that really good?
Yeah.
Appreciate each of you listening, genuinely.
Just remember, folks, there's no situation that can't be made worse. So just try to do better, and that'll be a lot better than staying where you're at. Could be worse. Thank you, Justin, for reaching out. That especially the folks listening who want entrepreneurs of their own. If you're thinking about, first of all, go check out the Energy Alignment for Entrepreneurs podcast, and then maybe they need to reach out to you. Maybe you could help them. And if you need anything from me, Just reach out. You have my email. I'm always at your disposal.
This was really fun.
Mm.
Absolutely, like, what a conversation. I don't know if I've ever had a 3-hour plus conversation before.
You should do it more often.
Yes, sir. I will take I mean, it is such a, how do you put it? When time distorts, and you have moments where it's like, "Wait, okay, 30 minutes felt like 3 hours, and then 3 hours felt like 30 minutes," you know? That's interesting. There's something there.
Take care, man. Mwah.
Take care.
Talk to you soon.
Speak soon, man.
Thank you so much to Justin for coming on the show, man. That was really fun. Deep stuff. Make sure you're checking out his podcast. It's on all the places that you can listen to them. Energy Alignment for Entrepreneurs, Dissolve, Stress and Anxiety, and all that other stuff. It's out there. And they're pretty short, so give it a listen, give it a try. It helps. Even just having it in your feed helps, as I said earlier. Thank you to all the magnificent people who donate to our Patreon every month. You're awesome. And if you would like to also be awesome, you can be by simply going to inthekeep.com/support and joining our Patreon. Or you could support in some other way. You can give on like the coffee thing, or you can send like a tip, or you can just, tell your friends how much you love this show. That's the best thing that you could do, and I would appreciate it if you did. Mwah. Oh yeah, you could buy me a book too if you want. Or my Amazon wish list is on there for books. Same rewards if it's a good book, and I'll try to read it as soon as you send it. Also, we have the list of like books and stuff mentioned in the show on our webpage for this. So if you go to inthekeep.com, just find the article. I'll have links to all the stuff that we mentioned in the shows, full transcript, show notes, time-stamped show notes, also on YouTube and stuff. And I think there's chapters in the feed, at least on certain apps that works on. Should be. I hope so. Should better be working. Let me know if it's not. Oh yeah, join our Discord. Discord.inthekeep.com. I love you. God love you. Stay in the keep. Let's take a moment to talk about Appalachia TCG. Whether you're searching for sports cards, Magic the Gathering, Flesh and Blood, Pokemon, or Yu-Gi-Oh!, they can offer you an extensive selection to suit every collector and competitor. As an official reseller, they are committed to providing authentic booster packs, singles, accessories, and rare finds that set them apart from competitors. They buy and sell lots of trading cards and toys, but their special is the Flesh and Blood trading card game, and they run official events, pre-releases, and more. Along with their ever-growing community, Appalachia TCG is the premium spot for trading, buying, and selling cards. I know what you're thinking, but I don't live in Eastern Kentucky. Well, that's the best part. You can shop online and in person. There is the official TCG player shop, eBay store, and online shop. Head on over to AppalachiaTCG.com. That's AppalachiaTCG.com. Tell them In the Keep sent you.
Hi, I'm Ben, host of the Field and Foley podcast. Every episode I sit down with incredible guests, not just sound designers, field recorders, or musicians, but experts in everything about audio. We explore the creative process behind the sounds that shape our favorite games, films, and experiences. Whether you're an audio professional or just someone who loves great sound, Field and Foley offers deep dives, behind-the-scenes stories, and insights you won't hear anywhere else.